Chapter 325. When I saw you during the day, I thought you were someone. But now that I look at you, it's wrong to say that you're a playboy. You're really a good-for-nothing. You were sleepy just now, but when I mentioned this, you woke up faster than anything else. Dongfang Wenqing snorted. Then he stroked his beard and said thoughtfully, "This is a headache. If it's too much of pity, but if this kid, it's difficult, but it's not." Dongfang Wendao and Dongfang Wenjian snorted and rolled their eyes at the same time. They thought, it seems that Big Brother actually has the same idea, but he's still pretending in front of the two of us, pretending to be noble and virtuous. He's really hypocritical. He has the mouth to talk about others, but he doesn't have the mouth to talk about himself. What a joke. This matter, let's think about it in the long run. Dongfang Wenqing gave a conclusion, then sighed and said leisurely, "Xie, Uncle scolded you just now for your own good. Uncle was misled by the rumors, thinking that you're quite unbearable. Today I finally see you, but I see that you're so heroic and promising at such a young age. You can be said to be second to none in the younger generation. If your grandmother saw you, I don't know how gratified she would be. If your mother could open her eyes to see you, how happy she would be." At this point, the three brothers lowered their heads at the same time, thinking of their sister who had been in a coma for 10 years and felt sad. "Tell me the story of Mother." Xie was a little sad. When he said the word mother, he unexpectedly found that his heart was trembling. Moreover, when he said the word mother, he didn't feel the slightest bit of reluctance, as if it was a matter of course in his blood, in his soul, as if he had already accepted it, just like his grandfather and third uncle. Dongfang Wenqing let out a long sigh. At the end of the sigh, there was a faint tremble, and the black beard under his chin trembled slightly, showing the sorrow in his heart. The three brothers looked at each other and saw the indescribable sadness in each other's eyes. "Your mother, her maiden name is Dongfang Wenqing. She is our most beloved little sister. She is gentle, beautiful, and adorable." Dongfang Wenqing's voice was trembling and extremely low. She looked at the flickering candlelight with misty eyes. Her voice sounded like she was talking in a dream. It seemed that as she spoke, her whole mind was immersed in the past. The little sister from back then, the cute little sister, the little sister that made people love her from the bottom of their hearts. But now, I still remember that the whole family was against my little sister marrying Jun Wuhui. But my little sister was determined. No matter how they persuaded her, she wouldn't change her mind. She had no choice but to agree to their marriage. At that time, her mother had told her, "Wenqing, if things don't go your way, come back as soon as possible. Home will always be home." At that time, his younger sister smiled happily and said, "Whether it's as you wish or not, ask your own heart. No regrets, deep love." And so he left. To this day, he could still remember that happy smile. It was as bright as spring flowers, leaving endless warmth in the family. But who would have thought that when she returned home, her face was haggard and her heart was like dead ashes? She slept for 10 years, never to ask her own heart again. He remembered that when he took her home that day, she was still conscious, but her eyes were wide open and she didn't speak. 3 days later, when his mother and the others were all by her side, his little sister suddenly used the last of her strength and murmured a few words. I'm sorry. No regrets in this life. No regrets in this life. Since you have no regrets, I also have no regrets. Where's my heart? No regrets in the end. No regrets in heaven and earth. No regrets in life or death." After saying that, 2 drops of hot tears slowly flowed out of her almost dry eyes and fell on the pillow. She slowly closed her eyes and fell into a long sleep. Even until she fainted, his little sister's heart was still filled with feelings of no regrets, not deep-rooted hatred. In life, I will follow him. In death, I will follow him. No regrets in life or death. For the past 10 years, their family had thought of countless ways, but they could only try their best to maintain her last chance of survival. But no matter what, they could not let her open her eyes. She had no regrets in her heart. She had already left, their mother flew into a violent rage because of this matter. She brazenly dispatched 196 Earth Xian assassins who had been trained by the family for many years. They slaughtered the martial world and wantonly retaliated. The name of the Dongfang family's assassins resounded throughout the world because of this matter. They also paid special attention to the Silver Blizzard City. Everyone in the continent felt insecure and was terrified. However, the Dongfang family's strength was insignificant. It was difficult for them to shake the entire world. In the end, they were intercepted by the three great masters. Li Ju Tian and Han Feng Shui led the main force of the Dongfang family to the Broken Dragon Valley. Even the elusive great master Yun Bi Chen appeared at that time. Then, they proposed a battle to decide the outcome of the battle. Their mother single-handedly fought against the Silver Blizzard cities Shao Xing Yun and Bu Yu. At that time, they had agreed that Xing Yun and Bu Yu's lives would be disregarded if the Shao family was defeated. This enmity would be written off. But the Dongfang family would retire from the martial world if their mother was defeated. That shocking battle could be said to shake the heavens and the earth. Their mother was exhausted from fighting for a long time. She had fought against two fourth-level experts of the Shun Xian family, but she had lost. She had been forced to make a vow. The Dongfang family will never appear on the continent unless the Xian beasts come out of Tian Fa. The 8 great masters will punish them if they break the vow. At that time, the 8 great masters weren't the same as they were now. At that time, the Blue Master Meng Hongchun and the Eagle Master Solitary Falcon weren't among the 8 great masters. The other 2 great masters had mysteriously disappeared and had then taken their place. However, their mother had been defeated in that battle, but she had left behind a backup plan. Shao Xing Yun and Shao Bu Yu would forever be stuck at the 4th level of the Shunxian family. They would never be able to reach the great master realm. After this battle, the Dongfang family, who had achieved boundless glory, could not help but suffer a great blow to their vitality. The Dongfang family hadn't appeared on the continent for more than 10 years, except when Mo Yu and Mo Cho had died in battle. Dongfang Wenqing had finally finished talking about the past. Whether it was the 3 Dongfang brothers or Jun Moxie, they all felt as if a huge mountain was pressing down on their hearts. It was so heavy that they couldn't breathe. Jun Moxie looked at the flickering candlelight in a daze. His face was expressionless, but his heart was in turmoil. His father and mother's undying love flashed in his mind for a moment, and his heart was filled with knots. He seemed to have seen the Dongfang family's assassins all over the continent. They spilled blood and took lives. They didn't return empty-handed. They moved unhindered in the pugilistic world. It was as if he had personally witnessed the desperate battle of the Dongfang family in the Broken Dragon Valley. The old lady of the Dongfang family couldn't win that battle. She could not lose. She had no choice but to lose. Even if she had full confidence in winning, she could only lose. Losing is often more difficult than winning. Yin Bi-chun, Li Ju Tian, and Han Feng Shui, the 3 great masters, were present. In fact, they were the top 3 experts in the world at that time. How could this blood feud be written off if the Dongfang family had one? Written off? It was very pleasant to hear. But the Shao family of the Silver Blizzard City wouldn't have agreed even if the Dongfang family had wanted to write off the feud. 2 of our ancestors died in battle. How could they not take revenge? How could the 3 great masters allow another war to break out? Therefore, the tragedy of the Dongfang family was doomed when they were intercepted. The old lady of the Dongfang family couldn't lose for the sake of the Dongfang family's survival. She had to admit defeat. She could win, but she had to lose. How tragic. Jun Moxie could imagine that everyone present at that time was also well aware of it. The old lady hadn't lost that battle. Otherwise, how could she have lost by only 1 move? Shao Xingyun and Shao Buyu were secretly injured, and they were stuck at the 4th level of Shunxian for the rest of their lives. This was the result of the pressure of the 3 great masters. The Dongfang family had no choice but to submit. Suddenly, Jun Mo Xie felt a sense of distaste for the three great masters from the bottom of his heart. The sword edge collapses the snowy mountains, and the Xian beasts come out of Tian Fa. What kind of harsh conditions are these? These are the worst conditions. Mother Fu asterisk Kerr. Why don't you just say that the Dongfang family will be allowed to come out if the heavens fall? If I had made a bet with them one day, I would have said, rats fly in the sky, and eagles scuttle in the water. Fishes scurry in all directions. Mother Fu asterisk Kerr. My mother had already declared that she would break off relations with your Jun family 10 years ago. That's because your grandfather's way of doing things had made my mother, your grandmother, very dissatisfied. In fact, she was extremely resentful. Dongfang Wenqing let out a long sigh. There was an indescribable feeling in her eyes. Jun Moxie remained silent. It wasn't convenient for him to speak about this matter. He had always been aware of his grandfather's temperament. This conflict must have arisen because of the Tianxiang imperial family. Perhaps my grandmother wanted to exterminate the Tianxiang imperial family. But my grandfather was determined not to do so. This disagreement has led to the breaking off of relations between the two families. And my grandfather's stubbornly loyal personality at that time is capable of doing such a thing. But that may not be the case after experiencing so many things over the years. Jun Zhantian is a hero of his generation. He has a straightforward temperament and is incomparably loyal. But this great strength of his is also his fatal weakness. Dongfang Wenqing sighed. Then, she said, since ancient times, the good bough has been hidden after the birds have been killed. Once the cunning rabbit has been killed, the hound is cooked. The more loyal a general is, the more the entire nation admires him. But the more miserable his fate will be. He will either die on the battlefield or be beheaded and his family confiscated. The more meritorious he is, the more awe-inspiring he will be. Dongfang Wenqing looked at Jun Moxie meaningfully. Then, she said in a slow voice, what's the point of being a high official and generous salary? Glory, splendor, wealth, and rank are all fleeting. Why not move unhindered between heaven and earth? Hee, you don't have to worry about this. Look at me. Do I look like a stubbornly loyal person? Jun Moxie smiled. He was trying to lighten the heavy atmosphere. Otherwise, the four of them would be so stifled that they wouldn't be able to breathe if this continued. You really don't look like one. You look like a little slippery fellow. No, it should be a big, slippery fellow. Dongfang Wenqing and the other two laughed at the same time. Since the Dongfang family can't come out into the world, then how did you come out? Jun Moxie asked curiously. The Dongfang family can't come out into the world openly, but we can come out into the world. As long as we don't act in the name of the Dongfang family and conceal our identities, won't we? Won't we starve to death if everyone huddles up in the mountains? Dongfang Wendao looked at Jun Moxie and used his eyes to say that he was stupid. Jun Moxie was stunned. Besides, the Xian beast tide is unprecedentedly powerful. So, the Allied forces will naturally gather all the strong forces that can be gathered. The reason why the three of us have come here at the same time is because the Shui Hun Manor has hired us. Dongfang Wenqing chuckled. She was helping Jun Moxie out of this predicament. Hired? Jun Moxie opened his eyes wide. Today, I received a gilded invitation card. Another of my best friends has finally willingly entered the besieged city and given up their freedom. Alas, the wedding is scheduled for the day after tomorrow. It seems that my wallet is going to shrink again. What makes me speechless is that they're afraid that I'll steal the groom's limelight because I'm too handsome. Unexpectedly, they won't let me be the best man. I'm speechless. Why? Why am I so handsome? God, let me be uglier. I'm praying, don't disturb me. Chapter 326. Of course we're hiring. When has our Dongfang family ever done anything without profit? Dongfang Wenqing glared at him and lectured. This is our basic principle. Jun Moxie was stunned for a while, and then he suddenly laughed out loud. This was really the case of, if you're not a family, don't enter the same door. He actually has the same principle as me. What are you laughing at? The three of them glared at him at the same time. That year, Your grandfather said that we're unscrupulous. Could it be that you're also, nothing to laugh at? This is a matter of course. After receiving money from others, we naturally need to receive remuneration. How is this unscrupulous? Do we have to work for free to be honorable? That's too unreasonable. June Moxie laughed and said, Then, what's the price for this operation? 100,000 taels of silver, and it's 100,000 taels of silver per person. The three of us, that's a total of 300,000 taels of silver. Dongfang Wendao proudly stretched out his palm and waved his 5 fingers a few times. This price is quite high, isn't it? June Moxie was dumbfounded and was speechless. With this 300,000 taels of silver, after we bring it back, we'll be able to sustain our family supplies for a long time. Dongfang Wenqing was somewhat pleased with himself. He stroked his beard and squinted his eyes, looking very accomplished. Bang! June Moxie fell to the ground, and his head fiercely hit the burning candle in front of him. He immediately extinguished one of the candles, and his face was covered with candle oil. What happened? Dongfang Wendao and the other 2 were shocked and hurriedly helped him up. Could it be that they're shocked that we've earned so much money in one operation? He had to admit that Jun Dashao was indeed shocked. As for the reason why he was shocked, 100,000 taels of silver per person and 300,000 taels of silver for the 3 of us? How can it be so cheap? I've already drunk a few jars of wine. How come I didn't know that the great Shan Xian's experts are only worth the price of a laborer? Jun Mo Xie had been struck by lightning. He had opened his mouth, and his 3 spirit Xian uncles were so ashamed that they couldn't show their faces. Jun Dashao wasn't speaking without thinking. The aristocratic hall had auctioned off the 10,000 gold wine, but this wine was truly worthy of its reputation as a divine wine. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was capable of turning the world upside down. Moreover, the circulation of this wine was extremely small and was limited to the upper echelons of Tianxiang. It was truly a wonderful thing that only the nobles could enjoy. So, it became very expensive because of its rarity. Not only within the borders of Tianxiang, but also many people from other countries who were fortunate enough to taste it and immediately fell head over heels for it. Therefore, the sky-high price of the 10,000 gold wine hadn't fallen. Moreover, the aristocratic hall had declared that it would never sell it again. Therefore, only a very small amount of it had appeared on the black market. And this wine had been auctioned off by the wealthy merchants who had been fortunate enough to buy it. And Jun Dashao had learned from Fatty, Hai Chan Feng, and the others that the price of the 10,000 gold wine had soared to a sky-high price of 30,000 taels of silver per jar. Fu *K. Is the wine you're drinking brewed from gold and jade? You could get 10,000 taels of silver just by drinking this wine? Do you think you can hire a worker for 100,000 taels of silver? Dongfang Wendao was extremely depressed, but he also understood that the Tianxiang Empire's upper echelons had always been extravagant and extravagant. In fact, they had always competed with each other for riches and honor. Moreover, Jun Dashao had long been known as a debauchee, so he was afraid that this matter might not be fake. The Dongfang family had once been one of the most powerful families in the world. They might not have been as powerful as the Silver Blizzard City or the Shui Hun Manor, but they were still quite powerful. However, they had always been secretive and low-key, so they had rarely been noticed. However, they had been quite commendable in terms of manpower and material resources. However, the Dongfang family had been bound by that damned oath for the past 10 years. So, it seemed as if the entire Dongfang family had completely disappeared from the world of mortals. The entire Dongfang family had been living in seclusion in a secret base, and they had almost cut off all contact with the outside world. Moreover, the great masters had been paying close attention to the Dongfang family in the first few years. They had been afraid that the Dongfang family wouldn't keep their promise. So, the Dongfang family had been forced to bow their heads and had been completely cut off from the world of mortals. However, the basic necessities of the hundreds of people in the Dongfang family were still an enormous amount. They had a deep foundation, but they were slowly being stretched to make ends meet. In fact, they felt like they were sitting on a mountain and eating it dry after a few years. Therefore, they had begun to contact the great masters in order to restore the Dongfang family's business. After all, the Dongfang family hadn't appeared in the world of mortals. But they still needed to maintain their livelihood. However, of the three great masters who had witnessed this, Yin Bichun had always been elusive, and Li Tian had been traveling the world all year round. So, it was extremely difficult to find them. Han Fengshui was the only one who had the opportunity to find them, but he was from the Silver Blizzard City. So, it was very difficult for the three of them to find him. Therefore, the Dongfang family had been forced to send a small number of people every year to maintain the business. However, most of the original businesses had declined in the past few years. Moreover, the new business chain required a lot of manpower and material support. So, it wasn't easy to establish. This time, Li Tian had personally sent a letter to the Dongfang family to ask for help, and he had offered 100,000 silver taels. This was a very generous amount of money. This also indicated Li Tian's attitude towards this matter. I know that you've come out, but I won't ask. In fact, the Dongfang family had attached great importance to this transaction. In fact, it was tantamount to owing the Shui Hun Manor a great favor. Therefore, the three Dongfang swords had come together for this very reason. However, they weren't just greedy for the 300,000 silver taels. Your grandfather has secretly dispatched a large number of people to deliver a large number of supplies to the Dongfang family's hideout. But your grandmother still can't get over it. Dongfang Wenqing smiled bitterly inside. Who would have thought that the Dongfang family, which had once dominated the world, would actually be forced to such a state? Jun Moxie remained silent. It's hard to say who's right and who's wrong in this matter. My grandfather isn't a heartless person. He must have realized that even if the Dongfang family is extremely powerful, and even if they have a lot of reasons, they would still incite the wrath of the entire continent if they were to rashly destroy the Tianxiang Empire's imperial family. Not only would the Supreme Alliance intervene, but even the 8 great masters would also rise in revolt. Moreover, the Silver Blizzard City's Shao family is also on the opposite side. The only result would be the destruction of the Dongfang family and the Jun family together. This can be said to be a sure thing. Anyone would have thought of it. My grandfather has dominated the battlefield for his entire life. He would have lived in vain if he couldn't see this result. After weighing the pros and cons, he's decided to break off relations with the Jun family. In any case, the most important thing is to preserve the existence of these two families. This result will be very painful for everyone for the time being, but it will ensure the reproduction of the two families. At the very least, it will ensure that the Dongfang family won't be completely destroyed. Otherwise, with Jun Tian's temperament, how could he swallow the humiliation and not mention the matter of revenge? Jun Moxie has always felt strange. My grandfather and third uncle are real men. How could they not take revenge for so many years? The 16 words of the Jun family's ancestral message don't make sense. So, it turns out that there's another reason. For Jun Tian, it doesn't matter if the entire Jun family dies for the sake of revenge. But if the Dongfang family is implicated, then that's something that this upright old man can't tolerate. A man with a D*CK wouldn't be stingy with the blood of his own family. But he would never wrongly accuse others of their deaths. Jun Moxie feels that his speculation can't be said to be the complete truth, but it should be quite close to the truth. In fact, living in seclusion for the past 10 years isn't necessarily a bad thing for our Dongfang family. Dongfang Wenqing saw that Jun Moxie's expression was a little sad. She smiled and comforted him, saying, "Our Dongfang family has always been famous for the art of assassination. But this art of assassination is also the biggest worry and flaw of our Dongfang family." Why is that? Jun Moxie was a little puzzled. Our Dongfang family has existed for more than 300 years. Throughout the generations, there have been many masters, but there has never been a supreme level master. Dongfang Wenqing said bitterly. Oh, What kind of logic is that? Didn't the old lady fight against the two Shan Xian masters of the Shao family all by herself? She could win, but she didn't win. This amazing strength isn't the strength of a supreme master. Jun Moxie was quite puzzled. Mother defeated the two Shan Xian masters all by herself. Of course, her strength is extraordinary, comparable to a supreme level master. But she still hasn't entered the real supreme level. The art of assassination practiced by the Dongfang family has always been about stealth and hiding. One strike is sure to hit the target, and the target is thousands of miles away. An assassin is not the same as a killer. Dongfang Wenqin continued in a serious tone. The Dongfang family has been working tirelessly on perfecting their assassination techniques since the day they were established. Their agility, speed, and agility have become more and more exquisite with each generation. Now, their agility techniques have become ever-changing and are approaching perfection. Dongfang Wenqin continued in a serious tone. The Dongfang family has always been trying to perfect their assassination techniques. But the consequence of this is that you have unknowingly entered a crooked path that is difficult to turn back from. Crooked path? Jun Moxie was lost in thought. His face gradually became a little gloomy. You've guessed it? You are also a person who is proficient in excellent agility. I think you can figure out quickly. Seeing his face, Dongfang Wenqin couldn't help but sigh. She said, if a Shunshin master wants to advance to the supreme level, it doesn't just depend on profound Xianqi. When a Shunshin master becomes a supreme level master, he will inevitably form his own system, including his unique understanding of Xianqi and martial arts, thus forming a unique domain that stands out from the masses. It can be said that every supreme is a grandmaster who can establish his own sect, and all of this can only be achieved through long-term exploration. Where does exploration come from? From actual combat, from killing, constantly discovering one's own weakness in actual combat, constantly improving, constantly going to actual combat, and improving again. After thousands of times, only then will one be able to achieve a complete and thorough understanding and a sudden inspiration. This is also the reason why every supreme was once a martial arts fanatic. If it wasn't for the obsession of martial arts and Xianqi, how could one reach the position of a supreme? Just blindly cultivating, one will never be able to advance to the supreme level. Jun Moxie nodded silently. He thought of how Solitary Eagle risked his life to fight the Black Eagle at the peak of the snowy mountain and lowered his status to look for people to fight. Wasn't it for this reason? As for us assassins, we have more than enough combat experience. But due to the characteristics of assassins, we lack the experience of fighting with people face to face. If we fight with people face to face, how can we be called assassins? So, although we kill a lot, the only thing we gain is that our skills are getting more and more mature. But in terms of absorbing the experience of other people's martial arts, we are naturally lacking. When an assassin makes a move, it's about killing with one hit. Although it's sharp and clean, often if the target isn't killed in one hit, it's the assassin who dies. If the assassin's weakness is exposed in front of the opponent, it's the same as seeking death. This is the biggest flaw of the Dongfang family. So, although our Dongfang family had many experts and countless assassins, when faced with 3 supreme martial artists, we were completely helpless. At that time, we could only choose to wrong our mother and make an unfair oath. Dongfang Wenqin looked at Jun Moxie with her bright eyes. Today, I'm telling you all these. I think you know my purpose. Because your movement skill is even more strange than ours. More agile. Your movement skill can almost guarantee that no one can kill you. But this kind of movement skill is a bigger obstacle to your cultivation of martial arts. Once you have this kind of peerless movement skill that can disregard any strong experts, you don't need to worry about your life anymore. You can have nothing to fear, and you can move unhindered in the world. But with this kind of movement skill, you don't need to worry about your life anymore. So, what else is there to worry about? Even if you don't admit it in your heart, even if you think that you won't slack off. But In fact, when you have this kind of movement skill, your mentality is already different from ordinary Xian experts. You won't be like them anymore, and you won't be on tenterhooks like them anymore. But it's only under the pressure of death that you can really achieve a huge breakthrough. So, we can only make a breakthrough when the conditions are right, but we won't have any unexpected gains. So, in this life, there's no hope of becoming a supreme martial artist. Jun Moxie was frightened and moved. Because of the powerful capabilities of the Hongjun Pagoda, he could guarantee that even the 8 great masters wouldn't be able to kill him even if they attacked him at the same time, even though he only had the strength of Yu Xian's level. So, he had always been fearless. So, he dared to oppose Tian Xian and Shun Xian even when he hadn't reached the Silver Xian level. Moreover, he had never felt the pressure of death in his heart. But he asked himself honestly, what if he didn't have the Hongjun Pagoda with him when he transmigrated? In that case, how many times had he died for what he had done? He had always been complacent before, thinking that he was omnipotent and had no scruples. But if he had continued with this mentality, how much progress could he have made even with the Hongjun Pagoda? Beads of cold sweat slowly dripped down from Jun Moxie's head as he thought about this. And the beads landed on the table in front of him with a clear and crisp sound. Dongfang Wenqing knew that she had reminded her nephew, and he was obviously in a state of intense contemplation. So, she couldn't disturb him. So, she quietly waved her hands at her 2 younger brothers, and the 3 of them quietly retreated out of the tent. Jun Moxie was left alone in the tent. He sat motionless in the tent and frowned as the lights flickered. Perhaps I should change a little? The Hongjun Pagoda may be an extremely heaven-defying treasure, but it's precisely because of this heaven-defying existence that its abilities are too powerful. So, it's not beneficial to my progress at present. Jun Moxie sat there for an entire night, but he still couldn't figure out this problem the next day. Early in the morning, Jun Moxie walked out of the tent with 2 dark circles under his eyes. He stretched his body twice. Dongfang's long beard fluttered in the wind. He stood quietly under a big tree at the entrance of the tent and looked at him. Why? Haven't you figured it out yet? Jun Moxie smiled bitterly. He looked up at the sky and said, You've given me a big problem. Can't I use such a wonderful technique? Or, when facing an enemy, I know that the opponent is stronger than me, but I still refuse to use it. Or, is it that Yu Xian doesn't use it against the supreme experts? Isn't that courting death? You've been thinking hard all night, and this is the problem you've been struggling with. Dongfang Wenqing actually lost her composure and widened her eyes. She suddenly scolded, Idiot! Idiot! Bastard! Idiot! Idiot! My sister is so smart. How can she have such a stupid son like you? You really make this old man speechless. You're such a blockhead. You're really asking for a slap. Was your brain kicked by a donkey when you were young? Jun Moxie really felt a little dizzy. From the previous life to this life, everyone praised me for being smart. Damn it, there's actually someone who called me stupid? He wanted to refute, but he couldn't find the words to refute. He couldn't help but be stunned. The reason I told you before is to tell you, when facing opponents of the same level, try not to use your technique to win. If you can fight them head-on, try to fight them head-on. You can try to challenge those of a higher level occasionally, but don't surpass yourself by too much. Who asked you to use your poor, bean-sized Yu Xian to challenge Tian Xian, Shun Xian, and supreme experts? Aren't you tired of living? Jun Moxie didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You didn't say it clearly. Do I need to say it clearly? If you can't beat them, do you want to fight them head-on? With such a good technique and speed, you naturally have to run when your life is in danger. Are you an idiot? Dongfang Wenqing was a little angry. How could this nephew be so stupid? But he didn't know that the smarter a person was, the harder it was to get out of a dead end. When Yu Xian faces supreme experts, they can crush you with one finger. Do you want to fight them head-on? Then what can you do with the superb body movement technique that you have mastered? Silly boy. Uncle Dongfang was very conflicted. I told you to use your resources as much as possible and fight head-on to gain experience, but I didn't ask you to die, then I understand. I really understand. Jun Moxie laughed. Suddenly, He somersaulted a few times in the air and went far away. If he stayed any longer, God knew how badly he would be scolded by this first uncle. When he saw him yesterday, he thought he was steady, elegant, graceful, and elegant. He didn't expect that it was all an illusion. Today he scolded him so harshly. Jun Dashao obviously didn't notice the change in his attitude. He had already acknowledged these three uncles, whether intentionally or unintentionally. To some extent, he had already equated them to the level of his third uncle, Jun Wui, because these three people truly cared for him with all their heart. You stupid brat. Dongfang Wenqing was still hating his nephew for failing to meet his expectations. He wanted to scold him a few more times, but his nephew had already disappeared 3 days later. Chapter 327. Orderly voices, accompanied by a strange and vigorous rhythm, resounded with a loud and shocking rumble. The dust and fog grew and rose into the sky in strips. This was the symbol of an elite army. If it was an ordinary miscellaneous army marching, the dust stirred up would be as messy as a mushroom cloud. Only when tens of thousands of people marched in unison, in a neat formation, and without the slightest bit of disorder, could they step on the dust and soar into the sky. The majestic voice naturally brought out a subtle feeling that could topple the mountains and overturn the seas. It seemed that with the arrival of these majestic footsteps, no one in the world, no army, could stop the march of this army. Jun Wui is worthy of being a member of the Jun family. His military discipline is indeed admirable, and I can't help but admire him. Dongfang Wenqing stood at the top of a big tree, gazing into the distance, and finally sighed. That kid is really not simple. Dongfang Wenjian and Dongfang Wendao couldn't help but sigh as well. From afar, the thousands of cavalrymen in front of Jun Wui looked like a surging torrent. Even the horses seemed to have set off at the same time and landed at the same time. No matter from the front or the side, it was a straight line, neat and uniform, as if they were cut by a knife. This was just strict discipline, but the expression on every soldier's face was full of pride. This was the cohesiveness of an army. An army that was like a plate of loose sand would never have such a proud expression on their faces. Facing such a neat and grand army, even Jun Moxie and Jun Dashao were shocked. When Master Dashao left, only the original army under Jun Wui was disciplined, but there were also a large number of private soldiers from the big families and the young master's bodyguards. Those people were very difficult to manage, and it was not an exaggeration to say that they were arrogant and unruly. Who would have thought that in a short period of a month, these people would be trained so smoothly? It seemed that the third uncle's management of the army was really good. Jun Dashao, who wasn't familiar with military affairs, wouldn't know that this wasn't as simple as just having one skill. Fortunately, this was Jun Wui. If it was someone else, they would have to go through a lot of trouble. Jun Moxie led his 250 men to meet them, but he was met with a cold face. The unruly Jun Dashao could only smile in the face of such a cold face. Because the owner of this cold face was the third master of the Jun family, Jun Wui. Jun Wui looked at his nephew with a solemn face, but he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Which vanguard in every dynasty would do this? Like a herd of sheep, they disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Not even the slightest bit of communication was sent back. Acting as a vanguard to this extent, even if it couldn't be said that no one would be able to do it in the future, it was at least unprecedented. In fact, Jun Dashao had done a pretty good job in opening the way. All the troubles and potential troubles along the way had been resolved by Dashao's unique methods. Whether it was legitimate or not, the task had been completed. Therefore, the army did not meet with any more obstacles along the way. Jun Wui was very satisfied with this. Even the higher-ups of the army who knew about it were very satisfied. At least, they couldn't find any fault with it. The only problem was that they didn't strengthen their communication. But what about those who didn't know about it? They would undoubtedly think that this kid had no sense of responsibility. Although they didn't meet with any trouble along the way, it was likely that Grand Marshal Jun or even Grandpa Jun were helping them from behind. The more serious problem was that the number of people who didn't know about it was huge. Out of 100 people in the army, at least 99 would answer, who asked them to have a good third uncle and a good grandfather. This involved the problem of convincing the masses. With such a lack of discipline and organization, if they weren't punished, how would they be convinced? Therefore, Junwoo didn't have any other choice. He could only give young Master Jun a good scolding the moment he saw him. Jun Moxie lowered his head and listened to the scolding. In a daze, he thought that his third uncle was praising him for doing a good job. In any case, he didn't hear the contents of the third uncle's words clearly. In the end, he was scolded until he fell asleep. Jun Mo Sie's intense gaze hinted that the third master was venting his anger. So, Junwoo had no choice but to hastily explain the various matters regarding the encampment. Then, he gave a few simple instructions. Then, he dismissed everyone. Grand Marshal Jun is really awe-inspiring and murderous. I haven't seen you for more than 10 years, and you're even more awe-inspiring than before. You let your own nephew clear the way for you, and even after completing the mission, you still have to scold him. You didn't even say a word of encouragement. You're really an iron-blooded man with ruthless self-discipline. A sarcastic voice rang out. Junwoo raised his eyebrows, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Who is it? Come out. I'll come out then. Do you think I'm afraid of a grand marshal like you? With a swoosh, 3 people appeared in the tent. Brother Dongfang? Junwoo called out in surprise. He turned to look. Second brother Dongfang. Third brother. It's you guys. After the surprise, his eyes flashed with a strong sense of guilt. In an instant, he felt that he was too ashamed to face them. Of course it's us. Junwoo, you're in such a hurry to go to Southern Heaven City. Are you courting death? Are you tired of living? Dongfang winching snorted. Although her words were full of sarcasm, her face was not very ugly. As long as one was attentive, it would not be difficult to feel a little concern in those words. The hatred the 3 brothers had for the Jun family was not that deep. Even in the past, they had only vented their anger on the Jun family. Now that they had seen the rumored debauchee nephew, Jun Mo Sie, turn out to be such a promising young man, they felt even less resentment. After all, it had been more than 10 years since that incident. Although the source of this disaster was Junwoo, but wasn't Junwoo also a victim? In fact, he was the biggest victim. 10 years of being a cripple, 10 years of repentance, and thousands of sufferings were all borne by him. Not to mention, Junwoo did not know about it in the beginning. When Junwoo finally found out about Han Yin Yao's identity, everything was already out of control. Looking at the heavy tiredness in Junwoo's eyes, as well as the deep sense of guilt when he saw the 3 of them, they knew that Junwoo had been far more miserable than them for the past 10 years. Even though they had deep feelings for each other, after the massacre 10 years ago, they had already vented a lot of their emotions. After such a long period of time, it was no longer as unforgettable as it was in the past. But Junwoo was completely different. The incident started because of him. Whether it was intentional or not, it was the truth. Although it was unintentional, it started because of him. It was an unintentional mistake, but it became the heaviest burden of his life. In these 10 years, he must have felt as if thousands of ants were gnawing at his heart every day and night. He and the others couldn't bear it any longer. So, they could get drunk and fight crazily. Then, they could use the extreme physical exhaustion to drive away the pain in their hearts. However, Junwoo's legs were disabled, so he could only endure in silence. The 4 of them looked at each other. In an instant, all 4 of them had a strange feeling, as if they had returned to 10 years ago. The scenes of the past flashed before their eyes, and they couldn't help but breathe heavily. Slowly, Junwoo's eyes turned red, and the corners of his eyes became moist. He opened his arms and forced a smile. Brother Dongfang, I missed all of you for the past 10 years. We haven't seen each other for a whole 10 years, 2 months, and 7 days. He looked at the sky and said in a hoarse voice, In another 4 hours, it will be the same time on that day of that year. The time that brought the grievous news to you. Jun Wui's eyes suddenly turned blood red. The hearts of the four people beside him shook heavily. That's right, it was that day, that hour, 10 years, 2 months, and 7 days, and 4 hours. Jun Wui's timing was so accurate. What did that mean? It meant that in the past 10 years, Jun Wui had never forgotten about this blood feud. But he could only endure it. He knew who his enemy was, but he could only endure it. Plus, there was the pain of being crippled, and the pain of being separated from his lover. At this moment, Dongfang Wenqing and the other two finally understood how Jun Wui had survived the past 10 years. This one sentence was enough. Third brother, these 10 years you've suffered. Dongfang Wenqing stepped forward and hugged Jun Wui tightly. The two of them hugged in silence. Jun Wui closed his eyes slightly, and the hot tears that were about to flow out of his eyes were hidden in his heart. The muscles on his face twitched, but he clenched his teeth and didn't make a sound. After 10 years, he finally received this sentence from the Dongfang family. This sentence of understanding and concern. 10 long years. Although it was a little late, but it was still here. Who knows how many times I've broken down in these 10 years? How many times? Jun Wuyi's expression didn't change, but his heart was filled with a sour and stinging pain. It was as if the Yangtze River was surging violently. Dongfang Wenjian and Dongfang Wendao thought about Jun Wuyi's 10 years of suffering, and then looked at the touching scene in front of them. Suddenly, their eyes turned red, and their noses became sour. They almost shed tears. They had no choice but to turn their heads and cough twice with all their might. This was because they were afraid that they would burst into tears and burst into tears. However, even if this coughing sound was barely concealed, it was still a trembling sound. As a man, how could they not know how Jun Wui had survived the past 10 years? If they were in Jun Wui's shoes, they would have committed suicide to apologize. However, Jun Wui had stubbornly endured these 10 years of torment until today. After a long time, everyone's emotions returned to normal. Chapter 328. What nonsense are you talking about? Mo Xia is our nephew. We can't let anything happen to him. You're also our brother. You can't let anything happen to you either. Dongfang Wenjian glared at him. It's not that I don't want to. However, on the way here, I received a few more reports from the military. Although the origin of the Xianbi's tide is still unknown, the scale of this tide is huge, and the degree of potential danger is so deep. It's said that the king of Tian Fa is furious. He issued an order half a month ago. All Xian beasts of 4th level and above are to leave Tian Fa and participate in this war. Jun Wui smiled and looked at Dongfang Wenqing. One of her Dongfang family's vows has been broken by more than half. Isn't Tian Fa broken by the Xian beasts? How come there's still half of it? Dongfang Wenqing was happy at first, but then she asked doubtfully. Because it's been confirmed that this war was initiated by the 3rd and 4th Xian beast kings of the Tian Fa forest. Tian Fa's most mysterious and powerful leader did not participate. Jun Wui took a deep breath and said, "This is the latest news. But I reckon that the Tian Fa forest Xian beasts will not be able to hold out as the war breaks out. Then, the leader of Tian Fa will make his move. I'm very sure of this. So the Dongfang family's vows have only one thing left. The sword peak will collapse. So that's how it is." Jun Moxie's heart stirred. I wonder what the sword peak looks like. I'll go and flip it over if I have the time. Moreover, the Xinxiai Empire and the Yutang Empire have also sent their armies to help as the Xian beast tide grows larger and larger. Even the Imperial Court of the Prairies has sent 10,000 elite cavalry. This news has been confirmed by the military. The three empires have deep grievances with each other. So, it's easy to imagine that they will drag each other down in this war. Moreover, the Silver Blizzard City's troops were led by Xiao Buyu, one of the 2 elders of the Xiao family. So, they were all from the Xiao family. My Jun family's hatred is as deep as the sea. Xiao Han and I are absolutely irreconcilable enemies. So, something is bound to happen. In addition, The Shui Hun Manor and my Jun family also have a grudge against each other, so we must guard against them." Jun Wui finished speaking in one breath, and then let out a long sigh. He said tiredly, "The situation is extremely grim. It's so grim that I'm starting to feel discouraged." Among the 8 Supremes, besides the first Supreme Yunbi Chun, the third Supreme Han Feng Shui, the Heaven-Seeking Supreme Mo Wen Tian, and the Azure Supreme Eng Hong Chun, the other 4 are all here. Jun Wui's voice was heavy, but his eyes were burning with passion. To Jun Wui, being able to experience the elegance of these supreme being powerhouses up close was something that he longed for. "Perhaps there's one more person you don't know," Dongfang Wenqing said in a deep voice. "Feng Wan Yun, the hurricane swordsman, is already on his way, or perhaps he's already arrived." Feng Wan Yun. Jun Moxie, who had been listening quietly from the side, raised his eyebrows. This guy shouldn't be a match for the solitary eagle anymore, right? Apart from the Silver Blizzard City and the Shui Hun Manor, the other major powers of the continent have also sent their people. The most famous among them are the Bailey family, the Duanmu family, the Beigong family, the Wenrin family, the Sikong family, the Zhuoqiu family, the Diwu family, and the Ouyang family. Including me, Dongfang, there are 9 great families gathered in Tian Fa. Although there are many people from each family, they're all very tough, especially the Duanmu family. Even the Duanmu Chao fan has come. Duanmu Chao fan? Jun Moxie snorted. This name is really memorable. Dongfang Wenqing also smiled and explained, the Duanmu family's Duanmu Chao fan is a bit of stutterer. When he announces his name, he thinks that he's very arrogant and drags it out. But the longer he drags it out, the more it sounds like Chao fan to others. Therefore, during a gathering of the 9 great families, everyone just called him Duanmu Chao fan. Over time, his real name is almost forgotten. "Very good," Jun Moxie said solemnly. "The handles of the walk are basically made of wood. Duanmu Chao fan, Chao fan is actually quite a story." "Huh?" Everyone burst into laughter. Only then did Dongfang Wenqing continue. "In addition, people from the Golden Soup Fort, the 7 Dragon Mountains, the Soul Severing Palace, and the Hao Ian City have also come. Other than those who are part of an organization, there are also some high-level, profound practitioners who come and go by themselves, and hermit experts who are innumerable." Dongfang Wenqing smiled bitterly. "This is the secret information that Li Ju Tian revealed before I came. As for how many more people have come in during this time, I don't know." Jun Wui's brows wrinkled as he listened to these illustrious names. The more reinforcements there were, the more terrifying the Xian Beast tide was. Fu *K. There are so many. Jun Moxie couldn't help but whistle. Then, he said, "Why don't we just flatten the Tian Fa forest if there are so many strong people gathered here? Then, everyone can catch a few Xian beasts and bring them back as pets. Is it worth making such a big fuss? These people have nothing better to do after eating their fill." What do you know? These words were shouted out by the 4 of them at the same time in unison. 8 ferocious eyes glared at the brat, who spoke rudely at the same time. "Emosia, your experience is still too shallow. You don't know the dangers of this. The Tian Fa forest stretches for thousands of kilometers. It covers almost 1/3 of the continent. How many Xian beasts are there? At the very least, there must be tens of millions of them. And that's only considering the Xian beasts who are at the 4th level and above. These people wouldn't even be enough to fill the gaps between their teeth if they were to face them head-on. To be honest, even a mouthful of saliva from a Xian beast is enough to drown these so-called experts to death." Dongfang Wenqing was very angry. So, she tried to wipe out her nephew's ignorance. "You know that it's just an if, but you'll need to have such a large area, even if you want to meet all of them at once. Tens of millions of Xian beasts, wouldn't they be squeezed to death on the prairie? Not to mention, we're in the mountains." Jun Moxie shook his head in disdain. "Fighting a war doesn't mean that one side is stronger with more people. In the end, you have to fight small battles one at a time. Many small battles are linked together to form a military campaign. Many battles are linked together to form a so-called war. Many wars are fought before there is peace. Seeing that Dongfang Wenqing was about to flip out again, Jun Wui quickly tried to smooth things over. He frowned and said, "It's because there are so many people, so it's very troublesome. It wouldn't be too difficult if there were only the troops of the three empires and the king of the prairie. Even the Shui Hun Manor and the Silver Blizzard City would have been able to control the situation. After all, these people know that the big picture is the most important, so they can control the war. So there's certainly room for mediation. But there's so many forces gathered together. Moreover, they have a long history and deep-rooted history. So it's hard to tell how many people there are. Perhaps a few words from any two forces could trigger a large-scale fight. Who doesn't have 3 or 6 friends? After all, the Xian experts of the Jianghu can't be compared with the disciplined army. This problem is indeed very troublesome." Dongfang Wenqing and the other two nodded. Moreover, there must be a unified commander for so many people. At least, there must be a supreme commander who can control the situation. Only then can we fight properly. Otherwise, wouldn't it be like sending rations to the Xian beasts if they swarm and attack as they please? Jun Moxie added. The first half of his sentence had won the unanimous approval of the 4 elders. But the second half of the sentence, sending rations, had successfully attracted 8 supercilious looks. This is a very obvious understanding. But this position of Supreme Commander is not only in name, but also in reality. It's an arduous and unrewarding position. In fact, it can even lead to many disputes. At least, the commanders of the 3 empires and the prairie won't allow themselves to be subservient to others, because they are here to represent their country. Comparatively speaking, this problem is relatively easy to solve. It is the duty of a soldier to obey orders. As long as the higher-ups can come to a consensus, everything will be easily solved. However, the most difficult to solve are the unruly people of Jianghu. These people are originally undisciplined, and they are even more undisciplined. Not only do they refuse to obey each other, but they also don't have the ability to command a large-scale military. Based on the prestige of the major forces, almost no one can accept the command of an ordinary commander. This is the biggest problem of the Allied forces. Jun Wui frowned deeply. But the battle of the Xian beasts is imminent. He sighed deeply and said helplessly, "I've been in the army for half of my life. I've fought in so many big battles. In terms of the forces that I've commanded, none of them have been as magnificent as this one. In fact, all of them combined might not even be able to compare to this one. But there's never been a battle where I couldn't see any hope of victory before the battle even started. Only this time, I don't even have the slightest chance. But the opponents this time are the Xian beasts. You should know that the strict hierarchy between the Xian beasts is beyond anyone's imagination, especially when the king of the Xian beasts personally instigates a large-scale battle. Every order must be strictly followed. With a long whistle, all of them can attack. Similarly, with a long whistle, all of them can retreat like the tide. Everything points to disaster. Jun Wui, Dongfang Wenqing, and the others looked at each other and read the same words from each other's eyes. Since we're already here, can we still retreat? Let's just take one step at a time. Saving people is a good thing, but it's meaningless to throw our lives away just to save people. In my opinion, it's enough that we can guarantee the safety of our people. As for the life and death of the others, does it have anything to do with us?" Jun Moxie smiled heartlessly. In this sudden and strange battle of the Xian beasts, the person who was the most certain and confident in his heart was naturally Jun Daxiao. It could be said that if the troops were to be divided into 3 or more groups, Jun Moxie could almost guarantee that his troops would be unharmed. But the other troops would be completely annihilated if it really couldn't be done. Then they could just go out and act tough and be done with it. Chapter 329. You brat, don't talk nonsense. Under such circumstances, how could he still have such selfish thoughts of self-preservation? At least 10 million Xian beasts will flood into the mainland if we lose this battle. How many civilians will suffer when that time comes? Even the most conservative estimate is that it will be tens of millions of them. This is a calamity. Jun Wui spoke up in a stern voice. We can only put our personal grudges to the back of our minds at this critical juncture and work together as one. Only then will there be a little hope. Yes, Wu Yi said it well. This battle between the humans and the Xian beasts will determine the fate of the continent for the next 100 years. I'm afraid that we will lose miserably if we don't unite as one. Li Ju Tian's arrogance won't allow him to issue a supreme summon if the situation is easy. I'm sure that he saw the crux of the matter and was forced by the dire circumstances to issue a supreme summon. Otherwise, he will be the greatest sinner of all time. Dongfang Wenqing smiled bitterly. Their morale will be boosted if they win the first battle. But if they lose, I can guarantee that at least a third of their men will slip away. After all, they want to take advantage of the chaos to fight for hegemony. But they will be finished if that happens. The deep-rooted bad habits of humans. Everyone wants to fight a favorable battle, and everyone wants to hit a drowning dog. But when the favorable battle becomes a tough bone and the drowning dog becomes a big tiger, I believe that most people will try their best to hide in the back and let others fight first so that they can take advantage of the situation. In the end, when they see that it's no good, they will just run away. I'd rather lose face than lose my life. The sky is high and the water is wide. In any case, I'm not the only one who's going to lose face. Jun Moxie shook his head as he spoke sarcastically. But he saw that the complexions of the four people were getting darker and darker. It seemed that they were about to gang up on him. Jun Moxie hastily laughed. I'm going to take a piss. I can't hold it in. I haven't even discharged my urine yet. You brothers, take your time to chat. He turned around and left as he spoke. The four people in the tent looked at each other in dismay. They were helpless against this mischievous brat. Now that things have come to this, there's no point in thinking too much. We'll meet Li Ju Tian once we arrive in the southern Heaven City. Then, we'll join your army to protect you and Mo Xie. We'll stay together if things don't work out. We'll have a chance to save our lives. It's like Mo Xie said, it's a good thing to save people. But it's meaningless to throw away one's life for the sake of saving someone. Let's act according to the situation. Jun Wui nodded solemnly. He looked up at the sky and sighed. I really don't know where the source of this catastrophe came from. What caused such a great disaster? The Xian beasts wouldn't come out of Tian Fa for no reason. Something or someone must have provoked them. If I knew who the culprit was, I would skin him alive. This is simply taking the lives of the world as a joke. The other three agreed in unison. Jun Daxiao had slipped away and had returned to eavesdrop in the corner of the tent. He felt cold sweat trickling down his entire body. He felt wronged in his heart. My original intention was to let them teach the Shui Hun manor a lesson. Who told them to snatch our Jun family's daughter-in-law? But, in all honesty, I really don't know why this matter has developed to such a spectacular extent. I didn't mean for this to happen. So, you can't blame me for this. Jun Wu found out that Guan Qinghan and Duge Xiaoi had secretly followed him to the southern Heaven City the next day. Jun Wu almost went crazy when he saw the two women hiding in the shadows. In fact, it seemed as if they had done something shameful. In fact, he nearly cursed Jun Moxie to death every time he saw him. In fact, he almost chased them down with a stick. How can these two women come to such a dangerous place? This had led to Jun Mo Xie and his third uncle playing a game of hide-and-seek. Jun Mo Xie would escape to any place where Jun Wu might go. He would escape faster than a rabbit and would never meet him. The army finally arrived at the southern Heaven City on the third day. It had already been the 33rd day since they had set out from the Tianxiang city. The army had traveled 400 miles a day, so they had traversed over mountains and rivers for more than 10,000 miles. Everyone sucked in a mouthful of cold air as soon as they arrived at the southern Heaven City. The land outside the southern Heaven City was barren for thousands of miles. Of course, there were still forests, but the places where people used to live were now in ruins. Especially when he looked in a certain direction, Jun Mo Xie laughed so hard that his stomach cramped up from the pain of other people's misfortune. That was where the Shui Hun Manor used to be. But it had now become the headquarters of the Xian beasts. Along the way, even at the back of South Sky City, there were large groups of high-level Xian beasts howling over. They would swarm and attack a lone Xian expert if they saw one. However, the Xian beasts were very disciplined. Not a single Xian beast could be seen more than 300 miles to the north of the Southern Heaven City. It could be seen from this that the Xian beast target was the people of the Southern Heaven City. Perhaps it was limited to those who had a grudge against them. For example, the Shui Hun Manor, Li Ju Tian, or his son. The Southern Heaven City was no smaller than the Tianxiang City. It was the largest city in the south of the continent. However, the surrounding mountains had been occupied by the Xian beasts. So, it was tantamount to being surrounded by an iron bucket. Jun Wui and the others could be said to have taken advantage of the large number of people. So, they entered the Southern Heaven City without any mishaps. The moment they entered the city, a long howl suddenly resounded from the northern peak of the Southern Heaven City. It pierced through the clouds and spread far into the distance. It seemed as if a message was being transmitted. The sound echoed from the north to the south and from the east to the west. The message was being transmitted from every direction. It continued to spread through the Southern Heaven City and continued to the south. A loud howl resounded from the south. Then it was relayed back to the north. It seemed as if two people were transmitting a message. One of them was saying, 10,000 enemies have arrived. The Tianxiang City has arrived. The other person was saying, I know, the translation might not be accurate, but it should be more or less the same. These Xian beasts are very organized and disciplined. They're better than many armies in this regard. They're practically the 5 stresses for beauties and 3 loves. Jun Moxie sincerely praised. He shook his head and said, Xian beasts aren't scary. What's scary is that Xian beasts are cultured. 2 tender laughs came from beside him. Guanxing Han and Dugu Xiaoi had their faces blackened by Jun Moxie before they entered the city. They were dressed as 2 skinny soldiers. Moreover, they were the kind of soldiers that people wouldn't take a second look at once. Because of this, the 2 beauties were extremely dissatisfied. But Jun Moxie stubbornly insisted on doing things his own way. He wouldn't bend the rules. This fully reflected his iron-blooded side. Dongfang Wenqing helplessly looked at this incomparably thick-skinned nephew of hers. She was exceptionally flabbergasted that this brat still had the mood to joke at this juncture. The ignorant were truly fearless, she sighed and said. The one who transmitted the message should be a peak 8th level Xian beast, the white jade lion beast. This king of the jungle is actually being used by the king of Xian beasts to transmit messages. It seems that this matter is really big. Big is good. It's lively. It'll be very exciting if we fight. Jun Moxie smacked his lips. He then said in a somewhat unwilling manner, Why haven't we seen any flying Xian beasts along the way? It'll be very cool if we catch one and use it as a mount. It'll be a great weapon to pick up girls. The girls' eyes will definitely turn red when they see it. Dongfang Wenqing glared at him. She panted for a long time. Then, she finally turned her head away. She was so angry that she almost had a cerebral hemorrhage. Uncle Dongfang finally understood that his nephew's reputation as a debauchee in Tianxiang wasn't without reason. He had shaken the entire continent. He also finally understood that a normal person would never be able to communicate normally with this kind of lunatic. It was like a chicken talking to a duck. Everything was in a foreign language. The Southern Heaven City didn't show the slightest bit of neglect in the face of the arrival of the Tianxiang reinforcements. Wan Wuyan, the commander of the garrison in the city, respectfully welcomed Jun Wui's entire army into the city. Jun Wuyan had been quite doubtful about this at first. It must be known that the Southern Heaven City was as famous as Tianxiang's capital city. It occupied a vast area. However, it also had a large number of residents. Moreover, reinforcements had arrived from all over the world. So, Jun Wuyan had thought that the city would be overcrowded and overwhelmed. So, he was afraid that there wouldn't be enough space in the city to accommodate these 20,000 troops. But it would be too risky to station most of the soldiers outside the city. So, Junwoo Yin had some concerns about this. However, the 20,000-strong army easily entered Tiannan City. General Wan Wu Yin, who was guarding the city, did not show the slightest bit of embarrassment. This was a strange and puzzling matter. Then, the entire army entered the city, and the mystery was finally solved. Both sides of the road in the southern Heaven City were filled with Jianghu warriors. They were coming and going. Occasionally, they could see wounded people with bandages on their bodies and bandages on their heads. Although it was a little noisy, it wasn't very chaotic. But everyone felt as if something was missing in the city. Jun Dashao thought for a long time before he finally realized what was wrong. He said, "Why doesn't there seem to be any commoners in this city?" His words woke everyone up. It wasn't that there weren't any commoners in the city. It was just that there were very few of them. Moreover, most of them were young and strong men. The old, the weak, the women, and the children were nowhere to be seen. Wan Wuyen, the commander of the southern Heaven City, smiled bitterly and said, "The Xian Beast Tide is so huge. How could I dare to neglect it? As early as half a month ago, I had already escorted all the commoners in the city out of the city. All the old, the young, the women, and the children have been moved 300 miles away. Only the young and strong men and the necessary goods are left behind. If we can defeat the Xian Beast Tide in the end, I will personally go there and bring my fellow villagers back. But if by any chance they can't live and work in peace and contentment there, but at least they can protect their lives." Jun Wui was filled with deep veneration. "General Wan, I admire your devotion to the country and the people." Wan Wu Yin smiled bitterly and said, "To tell you the truth, there have been many powerful and ferocious mystical beasts that have come to the city to wreak havoc at least a dozen times in this unprecedented calamity. Why should we make things difficult for these common people in this cruel war that can easily cause thousands of casualties? I have no one in the imperial court. I have been stationed in the southern Heaven City for more than 12 years. I have long since formed a deep bond with every plant and tree here. Although the people here are a little uncivilized in my eyes, they're all my parents, my brothers, and my best friends. Now, even if I have the opportunity to leave, I won't choose to leave." The way he looked at the southern Heaven City was like how he looked at the hometown he grew up in. It was full of warmth and nostalgia. The atmosphere became somewhat stifling. There must be a lot of people migrating this time, right? It must have taken a lot of effort, right? Jun Moxie changed the topic. The southern Heaven City is not like the inland. Although the area is large, the population is not large. Including the surrounding areas and the city, a total of 1,543,900 people have migrated. Wan Wu Yin was somewhat gratified and proud. He chuckled. It must have taken a lot of effort, but it's still more than 1,500,000 lives. It's worth it even if it's a little hard work. Awesome. Jun Wui looked at the ancient southern Heaven City and said in a heavy tone, "General Wan's painstaking efforts won't go to waste. I won't allow General Wan's efforts to go to waste." "I hope so. Everything depends on 3rd General Jun." Wan Wu Yin was silent for a moment. Then he said in a low voice, Wan Wu Yin reorganized the army and arranged a campsite. Then he walked towards the city lord's meeting hall with a group of people. Jun Wui and the others were startled when they turned a corner. "This is the meeting hall? Crap. This is the meeting square." All the irrelevant buildings in front of the city lord's mansion had been demolished. Only a large drill ground that could accommodate 10,000 people was left. It was unknown when a high platform had been erected in front of the city lord's mansion. It was more than 10 feet high from the ground and had been wrapped with a thick green cloth. Jun Moxie almost thought that they were going to put up a stage to perform a big opera at first glance. Countless tents had been set up on both sides of the stage. Large flags were fluttering in the wind in front of these luxurious tents. The autumn wind was fierce, and nearly 100 large flags were fluttering at the same time. It looked very imposing. These flags had the following words written on them: Shuehun Manor, Silver Blizzard City, Ouyang, Duanmu, Balibaigong, Wenren, Zhuoqiu, Shansai, Yutang, Seoul Severing Palace, and so on. June Moxie was in high spirits. He beamed with delight and said, I didn't expect that I would witness the legendary martial arts convention today. It's so F***ing exciting. I wonder if the beggar clan will be among them. However, Junwoo, he wasn't as simple-minded as Jun and Mosia. So, he immediately frowned. They would have to rely on a unified command of the military officers if they wanted to win this war. Those Jianghu tyrants might be able to command dozens or hundreds of people in a group fight. But Junwoo didn't believe that any of these people would have the ability to command tens or hundreds of thousands of troops. However, the military forces were clearly placed on an equal footing with the martial arts families. In fact, the position of the military forces was even placed at the back of the line. The powerful Xian experts wouldn't have paid attention to the military forces in ordinary times. But was this an ordinary time? Even if they were watching from the crack of the door, they would still have to fight this war first. But they still wanted to deal with the Xian Beast King of the Tian Fa Empire with a unified command. Wasn't this the biggest joke in the world? General Jun, our Tianxiang's military tent is over there. Wanwu Yin smiled and pointed. There was a relatively large tent in the middle of the tent. It was surrounded by a green cloth. The thick pillars on both sides of the tent were deeply buried in the soil. The tent's curtain was rolled up high. It could be seen that the inside of the tent was very clean and tidy. It was also quite spacious. It could accommodate a dozen or 20 people. A blood-red flag was fluttering in the air in front of the tent. The three words Tianxiang and Jun were floating in the sky like a divine dragon. They were faintly discernible in the strong wind. This flag was at least 10 feet taller than the other family's flags. Its surface was also much wider. Moreover, it was the only flag with a surname on it. Huh? Junwoo looked at Wan Wu Yin in a puzzled manner. Wan Wu Yin chuckled. There was a look of reverence in his eyes as he said, The Jun family has 4 generals. They're the military family that I, Wan Wu Yin, admire the most. The White General, Jun Wu Hui, the Iron Blood God of War, Jun Wu Ming, and the Blood General, Jun Wui, are the pride of my Tianxiang. I, Wan Wu Yin, have always been proud that our Tianxiang has such an iron blood family. These people are gathered in my southern heaven city. But this is my territory after all. This is Tianxiang's territory. This is the only thing I can do. I won't let the heroes of our Tianxiang bow down to others. General Jun, please. Many thanks. Jun Wui was silent for a long time. Then, he solemnly and cautiously said these 2 words. This Wan Wu Yin has heard many people's opinions about the Jun family from their conversations these past few days. Be careful, General Jun, Wan Wu Yin cautiously warned in a low voice. Jun Wui slowly nodded. There was a look of unswerving determination in his eyes. Jun Moxie's eyes flashed with a cold light. Jun Moxie pushed the wheelchair forward slowly. The 4 Tianxiang deputy generals were lined up behind him. Their hands were on the hilts of their swords, and their eyes were focused. Dongfang's 3 swords were proudly moving forward at his side. The group of people leisurely entered the venue under the watchful eyes of the various families. If anyone were to pay attention, they would have noticed that Jun Moxie was pushing the wheelchair. He was walking in a straight line in the middle of the venue. There wasn't an inch more to the left, and there wasn't an inch less to the right. This was an extremely arrogant attitude. This is my land, my territory. I have the final say. I'll walk however I want to. It seemed as if the families on both sides of the road were being inspected. Hundreds of gazes shot towards them like sharp arrows. Suddenly, the atmosphere of the entire venue became somewhat oppressive. It seemed as if the arrival of Jun Moxie and Jun Wui had brought a heavy pressure to the Tiannan city. These 6 people were calmly moving forward. However, it seemed as if they were looking at an invincible torrent of steel. They were silently, resolutely, and unstoppably moving forward. The autumn wind suddenly whistled over the Tiannan city. It was getting stronger and stronger. The dark clouds in the sky rolled over and slowly converged towards the center. A gust of wind whistled through the air. Sand and pebbles were sent flying, and dust and smoke rose in all directions. Dozens of flags suddenly fluttered towards the south. Even the rustling of the flags suddenly became uniform at this moment. The gust of wind rolled up the dust and blew towards them. The four generals and Dongfang, winching, slightly squinted their eyes. Their bodies paused for a moment. However, Jun Wui, who was at the forefront, looked indifferent. His expression was cold, and his eyebrows didn't even twitch. Jun Moxie, who was behind him, was as calm as the clouds. His eyebrows were like a dormant dragon, as if he could fly out at any time. His handsome face had a rare sense of desolation. He didn't move an inch. He didn't care about the changes in the sky, nor did he care about the hundreds of gazes around him. It was as if he didn't see or hear anything. Their advancing speed was neither fast nor slow, and they didn't change at all. In everyone's eyes, this pair of uncle and nephew, who were sitting and moving, was like a peerless divine sword, splitting the wind and clouds in half, splitting open a broad road that could only allow two people to advance. This was Tianxiang's territory, and it was also the closest to Tianxiang. However, Tianxiang's army was the last to arrive. Many people had already lost their patience and were very dissatisfied. They were waiting for the arrival of Tianxiang's army to embarrass them. This was also the main reason why the aristocratic families didn't go out to welcome the army into the city. However, looking at this pair of uncle and nephew, no one had any thoughts of going forward to reprimand them. No one thought of the previous discussion. Everyone's hearts were actually heavy. It was all respect. Even Xiao Han, who was most jealous of Jun Wui and wanted Jun Wui to die, couldn't help but feel a little envious at this moment. There was a deep sense of inferiority in his eyes. Don't tell me. I'm really not as good as him. Jun Wui may not have the cultivation of Shen Xian, nor did he have the martial skills of a supreme martial artist. However, this famous general who had once commanded millions of soldiers on the battlefield was showing his unparalleled demeanor to the heroes of the world, to the countless Tian Xians, Shen Xians, and supreme martial artists. This kind of demeanor, if not for the fact that he had millions of soldiers in his hands, if not for the fact that he was a great general who could set fire to 1,000 miles with a flick of his finger, if not for the fact that he was a supreme commander who had always been victorious, and if not for the fact that he had the heart to win, no one could have this kind of demeanor. Even the world's #1 Xian expert would not have this kind of demeanor. This was the domineering aura of holding mountains and rivers in one's hands. The aura of disdain for the common people, although there were only two of them. But it was enough. That kind of cold demeanor, from these two people who seemed to be calm and composed, started to spread out arrogantly. Even if there were mountains of knives and forests of swords and seas of hell in front of them, I will step over them. I will flatten them. The generals of the Shun Ci Empire and the Yu Tang Empire stood up in unison. They couldn't help but straighten their bodies as they looked at their former mortal enemy. Moreover, they were also their military idols, and their gazes were fervent. This was the mutual understanding between soldiers. A line of 9 people slowly entered the tent in the midst of absolute silence. They walked in the same rhythm and slowly entered the tent. The winds and clouds in the sky suddenly changed and covered the sun, and the sky seemed somewhat dark in an instant. Suddenly, someone laughed out loud and said, "You're worthy of being called the Blood General. You're worthy of being called the Blood General. Your demeanor of a commander who can intimidate the entire world is very convincing. I, Sikominyi, admire you. Moreover, I apologize for not coming to the city gate to greet you, General Jun. This Sikon would like to have a drink or two with you, if General Jun has some free time." A majestic and heroic laughter resounded. Then, a tall and sturdy man strode out of the tent under the banner of the Sikon clan. He had the back of a tiger and the waist of a bear. His stature was extremely majestic, but gave people a very harmonious and comfortable feeling. His facial features were rough, and his cheeks were shaved green. But one could still see that his thick, curly beard had sprouted out. Ju Moxie took a cursory look at this man. He was at least 2 meters tall. He stood in front of the tent like a towering iron tower. But He also looked like a steep and lofty mountain. This man was the #1 expert of the Seekong clan. Seekong and Yi. Brother Seekong is too serious. This younger brother is the host. But I've arrived the latest. So, I shouldn't have apologized to all the seniors and brothers of the clan. You and I can drink and chat merrily as long as Brother Seekong is interested. Jun Wui's clear and bright voice resounded in a calm tone. Good, good. Seekong and Yi laughed heartily. Haha, this family's lord was just about to speak. But you've taken the initiative. Third General Jun, I'm the Duanmu family's lord Duanmu. Fried rice. Greetings. This man was speaking in a drawn-out manner. He was stuttering a bit, but he still had a very serious look on his face. In fact, one could hear a hint of pretentiousness in his tone. Jun Moxie chuckled. One could tell that this man was none other than the Uncle Dongfang had mentioned before, Duanmu fried rice. He didn't know whether he was extraordinary or not, but he was certainly pretentious. The Duanmu family's lord is very polite. I'll pay a visit to the family's lord in a moment. Jun Wui's voice was neither happy nor angry, but it gave off a warm and comfortable feeling like a spring breeze. No, you're welcome. Duanmu fried rice. Duanmu. Chow Fan laughed twice. He was about to speak again when an eccentric voice suddenly spoke. These two are putting on airs. The last person to arrive is the Tianxiang Empire's Jun family's Jun Wui, right? Jun Moxie looked towards the source of the voice and saw that the man who had spoken was 28 or 29 years old. He was tall and straight and had an extraordinary bearing. His facial features were handsome, but there was a hint of maliciousness between his eyebrows. He was standing under the Shui Hun Manor's flag. He was dressed in an embroidered robe, and there was an antique sheathed sword hanging diagonally from his waist. One could tell that it was a rare divine weapon at a glance. He was looking at Jun Moxie with a disdainful expression. Jun Moxie instantly understood who this man was. Who else could it be other than Li Tungyun, the son of Li Ju Tian? You're just a pretty boy who relies on Zhu Meng. You're extremely vulgar. How could there be a war between humans and beasts if it weren't for you, boy? I'll find an opportunity to cripple you. Jun Moxie laughed and stood up. How could Jun Wui take part in a war of words between the younger generation? So, the debauchee Jun would naturally step in. He spoke in a light voice. This man's eyes are on the top of his head, and his nose is pointing upwards. Is he the young master of the Shui Han Manor? You're also the local bully here. Young Master Li Tingyun. Am I right? You. Humph. Do I still need to rely on my power to deal with you? Li Tungyun's eyes revealed a trace of maliciousness and contempt as he spoke in a gloomy manner. The situation is so urgent, and yet your Jun family has arrived so late. What are your intentions? Can't others ask what you're doing? We're aware of the urgency of the military situation. But why are you so late? First, you want to ask why His Majesty didn't issue an order earlier. Second, I want to ask your Shui Hun Manor why you're so late, since the situation is so urgent. Why didn't you ask for help earlier? Jun Mo snorted and said, That's right. The Shui Hun Manor's reputation is very important. Your Shui Hun Manor have been so arrogant and self-conceited. You've been stubbornly stubborn. You've dragged this matter to this point. How could this have happened? You're so incompetent that you've asked for help. You don't feel ashamed, and yet you have the face to blame others? Everyone here can ask us what we're doing. Only you and your Shui Hun Manor can't ask. Jun Moxie smiled. Even if you want to blame us, there are so many senior experts here. So, how could you even get a chance to ask? Don't forget that Master Ju Tian is your father, and not you. What qualifications do you have to ask? Who do you think you are? You dare to talk to me like that? You got guts. Who are you? Li Tungyun's eyes narrowed. He knew that he wasn't a match for the man in front of him. So, he changed the subject and started to interrogate him about his identity. My elder brother is Jun Moxie. Jun Moxie smiled proudly. You must have heard of my great name, right? Don't you feel like you've heard of my great name for a long time? It's like thunder piercing the ears and the bright moon hanging high in the sky. But I've finally met you today, and I've realized that your reputation is well-deserved. So, you're June Moxie, that debauchee of the June family? That debauchee of the June family? That lecherous lecher of Tian Xiang. This young master of the manor has heard of you for a long time. Your notoriety is well-deserved. Li Tengyin felt that he had caught the man's weak point. So he laughed twice and said, "It's just that this place is full of outstanding talents. How can a ruffian like you sneak in here? What qualifications does a lowly person like you have to speak to this young master of the manor?" June Mo. Xie laughed mischievously and said, "I'm a scoundrel who doesn't shrink from any crime. There's nothing to deny about that. But even if I'm a debauchee, I'm not shameless enough to snatch someone else's wife. Young Master Li, you're my senior in this regard. You're a role model for me to learn from." You. Guan Qinghan was a good girl from Tsinghua University, but she was forcibly taken away by your June family. The two of us fell in love with each other. So what's wrong with me saving her from a fiery pit? Not to mention that your elder brother has been dead for many years. Do you expect her to guard your dead brother's memorial tablet for the rest of her life? Is there such a logic in this world? Li Tengyun's face turned slightly red. He suddenly became angry. He obviously didn't want to admit that he was despicable. So he hastily came up with words to quibble. Fell in love with each other? You saved her from a fiery pit? Did you ask for her permission? June Moxie faced upwards and laughed heartily. I didn't expect that someone in this world could be shameless to such an extent. Not only did you abduct a commoner's daughter, but she's also his daughter-in-law. What's more, you even threatened her family. You said that you'd exterminate their entire family if they didn't hand over this woman. Li Tengyun, you fell in love with each other and saved her from a fiery pit? You're very different from the rest. I, the #1 debauchee of Tianxiang City, have no choice but to concede defeat. I'm impressed by you, young Master Li. I'm sincerely convinced and full of admiration. Your shamelessness is #1 in the world. Most of the people present at the scene didn't know about this matter. So, they couldn't help but look at Li Tengyun with disdain when they heard these two men speak. The Shuihun manor was overbearing, but it had provoked public anger at this time. So, how could they be afraid? The people of Jianghu valued lust above all else. But Li Tengyun would have committed a great taboo if he had done such a thing. Enough. There's no need to say anything more. A deep and angry voice came from inside. The voice wasn't loud, but it shook everyone's ears. Several silhouettes slowly walked out. Suddenly, the entire drill ground was filled with a surging and tyrannical aura. The man in the lead had a tall stature. His facial features were simple and unsophisticated. He had 3 strands of black beard on his chest that were fluttering in the wind. He had a pair of slender eyes that radiated power in all directions. He didn't seem angry, but he had a natural bearing that could dominate the world. Everyone could feel that this man was overbearing to the bones. He wasn't deliberately arrogant, but everyone could feel that no one in this world was worthy of his attention. In fact, he even dared to fight against the blue sky above his head. This was the man who had spoken earlier. June Moxie hadn't seen him before, but he knew that this man looked like he was in his 40s or 50s. He had been famous for more than 60 years. He was Li Ju Tian. Apart from him, no one else could have such a domineering style that could shake the heavens and shake the earth. The great master Li Ju Tian was at least 100 years old according to his actual age. But he looked so young. June Moxie secretly cursed. No wonder this old man can have a 20-year-old son, even though he's over 100 years old. It looks like he can have a few more children. He's a monster. Li Ju Tian was followed by the great master of life and death, Shi Changshao, the cold-blooded master, Lei Wu Bei, and the divine eagle, solitary eagle. There was another man at the very back. His face was ice cold. He was dressed in black. He had a black robe, black shoes, and a black scabbard at his waist. This person looked like a sharp, pitch-black blade. He was just standing there calmly. But everyone could feel the threatening aura of his sword chi. The aura of his sword chi soared to the 9 heavens. There was no need to think about it. This man was Solitary Eagle's rival, Feng Wanyun. He was the only substitute amongst the 8 great masters. He was also a peerless swordsman. He was a peerless powerhouse. However, Jun Dashao was confident that the divine eagle, solitary eagle, had successfully broken through under his guidance. So, he had thrown off this old rival of his for decades. Everyone has arrived. So, I invite the leaders of each family to gather in the main hall. We will discuss the strategy to repel the enemy. Li Ju Tian glanced around. He didn't mention the argument between his son and Jun Moxie. However, his eyes were calm when he looked at Jun Moxie. But Jun Moxie could clearly feel that those 2 eyes were like 2 sharp swords that had pierced through the sky. And they had fiercely pierced his eyes. It seemed as if the depths of his heart and soul had started to tremble in that instant. This was a kind of fear that had arisen from the bottom of his heart. I can't match him. I can't match him. This was the first time in Jun Moxie's life that he had felt defeated and dispirited. Jun Moxie hadn't faced a great master before this. He had faced the great masters of life and death, Shi Changshao, the cold-blooded master Lei Wu Bei, and the divine eagle, solitary eagle. But he had felt this way when he looked into Li Ju Tian's eyes. This was probably some sort of spiritual attack. One would never be able to advance an inch in their life if they were to plant a seed of fear in their hearts. However, this great master Li Ju Tian's protectiveness had made Jun Moxie very angry. He was angry from the bottom of his heart. This is a quarrel between 2 juniors. You're the second great master, and you're using this method to vent your son's anger? This is a loss of grace. Bullshit second great master. What kind of joke is this? However, Jun Moxie also understood how much Li Ju Tian spoiled his son. He clearly knew that his son was in the wrong. But he didn't say anything. Instead, he used his power to bully the victim's family in front of everyone's eyes. It was no wonder that the 2 Xian Beast Kings had come together to break his son's legs. They hadn't even tried to take his life. But they had still provoked such a strong reaction from him. He hadn't even hesitated to issue an order to summon the great masters. But he still refused to compromise. Jun Moxie had faintly understood why this matter had escalated to such an extent. Jun Moxie quickly closed his eyes and revolved the art of unlocking the heaven's fortune. And that dreadful feeling disappeared in an instant. However, he still felt awed in his heart. Li Ju Tian's strength was obviously several levels higher than that of the likes of Solitary Eagle and Lei Wu Bei. He was truly worthy of being the second great master of the world. Everyone echoed Li Ju Tian's words one after another. No one had noticed that Li Ju Tian had already attacked Jun Moxie. They believed that no one would uphold justice even if someone had discovered it. After all, the biggest fist was the greatest justice. Offending the second great master for a mere debauchee of a younger generation, everyone would have made the same choice. A long and faintly discernible roar seemed to have come from the horizon. Everyone was startled and pricked their ears to listen carefully. In an instant, the howl suddenly grew several times louder. In an instant, it seemed as if it had already arrived in the sky. In a breath's time, it seemed as if it had passed through tens of millions of miles of space. From being inaudible, it turned into a thunderous roar. Then, it exploded in everyone's ears as if the heavens were falling and the earth was splitting apart. Puff! Several of the southern heaven cities' soldiers fell to the ground. They spouted blood from their mouths. They had been injured by that long roar. And the person who had issued that long roar was at least 5 kilometers away. Such terrifying lethality. The roar suddenly stopped after it had shaken violently. But it seemed as if it had been very determined. Then it abruptly stopped. At this moment, everyone could tell that the whistling sound was actually very clear and melodious. The roar had barely faded when the Xian beasts raised their heads and roared in unison. Millions of Xian beasts roared in unison. The roars of hundreds of thousands of Xian beasts resounded like a tsunami. It was as powerful as an earthquake. The ground beneath everyone's feet slightly trembled, and dust rose up. The roar had formed a huge volume and had penetrated the blue dome of heaven. The dense black clouds had suddenly vanished. They had been driven away by that violent roar. The sky was clear and bright. Li Ju Tian's complexion changed. He looked into the distance with a dignified expression. His voice was filled with unconcealable shock. Tian Fa. Boss has come out. Chapter 330. Millions of Xian beasts roared in unison after that soul-stirring and unforgettable howl. Then, two different howls resounded one after the other. Everyone in the southern heaven city could clearly hear them. One of the two howls was clear, and the other was vigorous. They belonged to the Xian beast kings of Tian Fa, Long Crane, and Bear Mountain. However, only a few people knew that these two were the instigators of a Xian beast invasion. With a swoosh, a huge white crane suddenly flew from the north to the south like a bolt of lightning. From afar, that white crane had a wingspan of at least 50 to 60 feet when fully spread out its wings. There was a bright red crane crown on its head. Under the bright sunlight, the crown shone with a dazzling brilliance. Its long, sharp beak was like a sharp sword that could cut through the wind and clouds. In the instant it flew over the city lord's mansion, everyone could clearly see that the huge white crane seemed to look down with disdain. Its huge wings covered the sky, and in an instant, the heavens and the earth dimmed. It was as if a dark cloud had suddenly floated over and then floated away, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, a huge silhouette was speeding through the forest in the distance. It didn't matter whether it was the road or the trees in front of it. It didn't stop for even a moment and crashed into a big tree that could be hugged by it. And it was broken in the blink of an eye. Then it forcibly passed through the trunk of the tree. That silhouette had already run away without a trace by the time the tree collapsed with a loud rumble. Li Ju Tian's silhouette suddenly flew to the roof. His hands and feet didn't move during this process. In fact, not even a single strand of his hair moved. But he just flew up in a very abrupt manner. He stood still on the roof, and a vivid and lifelike shadow could be seen at his original position. But it was gradually fading away. This was no longer a movement technique. In fact, it was closer to a magic trick. Is this the Venerable Mei? This Li Ju Tian has failed to welcome you. Li Ju Tian gathered his Xian Qi, and his deep and dignified voice echoed from afar. This could be seen from the fact that he had taken some time to speak after he had ascended to the roof. He was afraid that he would lose face in front of this lord of Tian Fa, and was unwilling to be at a disadvantage. That sonorous voice suddenly rose into the air and slowly spread out. It floated towards the south in a solemn manner. The people present initially heard it to be calm, but once the voice spread out, it was as if thunder was roaring and 10,000 horses were galloping through the mountains and valleys. Its momentum was unusually great. His voice echoed in the forest like a tide. After a long while, he finally rested. My apologies for not welcoming you earlier. I failed to welcome you from afar. Welcome from afar. Welcome, welcome. Cries of alarm resounded in the surrounding forest. It was evident that some of the low-level Xian beasts had been shaken by Li Ju Tian's voice. This had given rise to a lot of panic. One had to admit that Li Ju Tian's sound transmission technique wasn't as good as the Tian Fa Beast King's roar. Moreover, it wasn't as good as the Xian Fa Beast King's roar. But they were still on the same level in terms of their realms. A long time passed. A clear voice rang out unhurriedly. Everyone clearly understood that the person who spoke was at least a few dozen miles away from them, but when they heard the voice, they felt as if this person was speaking to them right in front of them. This person's voice was very strange. It was neutral and calm. It was impossible to tell whether this person was a man or a woman. Li Ju Tian, so it's you. Who else could have such a profound cultivation? No wonder. I was wondering why my two younger brothers were so furious. They wouldn't even pay attention to an ordinary person. In fact, they even suffered a loss. Not bad, not bad. Li Ju Tian, you made progress. You've truly made progress. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They felt as if their scalps were going to explode. Li Ju Tian was an apex figure in everyone's eyes. He was publicly acknowledged as the second of the 8 great masters. However, This person didn't have the attitude of an equal. In fact, he had even complimented him by saying, "You've made progress." This compliment was like a teacher saying to a well-behaved and obedient child in a kindergarten, "Little friend, you've made progress. You're such a good kid." Li Ju Tian's voice was matchless and powerful. However, the opposite party's voice was calm and didn't seem to be exerting any strength. But which one of them wasn't an expert? How could they not hear that this person's cultivation was much higher than Li Ju Tian's? It wasn't just one level. Even if they were at the same level, it would at least be like the difference between the solitary eagle and Li Ju Tian. Li Ju Tian's voice had resonated from the same distance. But the opposite party's words hadn't been echoed. An ordinary person's cough would have resonated in this mountainous environment. But he hadn't been able to get an echo, even though he was dozens of kilometers away. What kind of control is this? Just this controllability alone was already at the acme of perfection and had reached the pinnacle of perfection. Li Ju Tian raised his voice and said, "The cause of this matter is that these two have provoked my Shui Hun manner for no reason. I, Li Ju Tian, should have retaliated. But where did I go wrong? And how can Venerable may not see who's the one who's suffered a loss? This Shui Hun manner is this old man's life's work, but it has now been reduced to ashes. I don't know what Venerable May would say if I were to demand an explanation from Venerable May." Li Ju Tian's words had a hint of condemnation in them. The opposite party's cultivation was higher than his. However, Li Ju Tian was the second most powerful great master in the world. So, he couldn't show weakness even if he lost. The distant voice suddenly became sharp. "Li Ju Tian, you've been my younger brother. Do you think you're in the right? Do you think I'm so easy to bully? Li Ju Tian, are you sure that you're not dreaming?" Everyone's hearts trembled at the same time. This is another extremely protective master. He's unreasonable and cunning to such an extent. Today, my horizons have been broadened. Previously, I saw Supreme Master Ju Tian shielding his own son and avoiding the sharp topic. Then, I met another master who's even more unreasonable. I wonder if this is the cycle of karma and retribution. Jun Moxie stroked his chin and felt some appreciation in his heart. Awesome. He has the same temperament as me. I'll definitely give some benefits to Venerable May in the future. I wouldn't dare, Li Ju Tian snorted and said. It's just that justice is in the hearts of the people. There's a reason for everything. Even the world's #1 expert can't be unreasonable. The man let out a long laugh. Reason? Li Ju Tian, your joke isn't pleasant to listen to. Li Ju Tian, have you ever been reasonable with anyone in your life? How come you're the one being reasonable when it comes to your own situation? Justice is in the hearts of the people. You, Supreme Ju Tian, have just said this, but do you believe it? These words were very bitter. The so-called laws of the world were only used to bind ordinary people. They had no binding power over the strong people of the world. Justice was in the hearts of the strong, but it was just empty talk. In the world of the strong, the one with the bigger fist was the one with the right to reason. The man's words were a little sophistry, but they were the truth. Moreover, he had ridiculed Li Ju Tian. Jun Moxie felt very happy as he listened to this. He almost stepped forward and pointed at Li Ju Tian's nose and scolded him. You old bastard. You keep saying that justice is in the hearts of the people. But have you ever been reasonable? Has your son ever been reasonable when he snatched someone else's wife? Where's the justice? The wicked will be tortured by the wicked. Li Ju Tian snorted heavily and said, Venerable May's words seem to indicate that she's going to protect him without distinguishing between right and wrong. Great Master Li Ju Tian was the second in command of the 8 great masters. So, he didn't want to speak against his conscience. So, he avoided the previous topic and made it clear. Moreover, more than half of the world's strongest experts were gathered here. So, it would be difficult for the Venerable May to deal with the formidable forces present here, even if he had the ability to transcend the heavens. The man spoke in a cold and unyielding voice. I'm going to protect him. What can you do, Li Ju Tian? The 8 great masters have shaken the world in the secular world. But I don't care about you. Li Ju Tian, please think about who you're talking to before you speak. The man paused as he spoke till here. It seemed as if he had something to say. But then he suddenly roared in anger and asked in a very fierce manner, Li Ju Tian, when did you enter the elusive land of the immortals? How dare you leave a wound on my fourth brother's body? You got guts. The power of this roar was earth-shattering. In fact, even the winds and clouds in the sky were stirred up by this roar. It could be seen that the Lord of Tian Fa was very angry. It seemed that the injured Bear Shan Shan had arrived in front of him. So, he had also seen the wounds on his body. Jun Moxie's heart stirred. Hermitage? What kind of place is that? Why haven't I heard of it? He looked around and saw that everyone had a perplexed expression on their faces. It was obvious that they didn't know. Jun Moxie pondered a little deeper while everyone was puzzled. The hermitage wasn't something that he could touch upon for the time being. But Li Ju Tian's ability to injure Bear Shan Shan was a Xian Beast King of Tian Fa. It must be known that a Xian Beast physique was far superior to a human's. And Bear Shan Shan was a Xian Beast King. So, he had withstood the attacks of Shi, Chang Xiao, and Solitary Eagle. And he hadn't sustained any serious injuries. In fact, he had even managed to escape unscathed. So, it was easy to imagine the formidable defensive power of his body. But Li Ju Tian had managed to injure Bear Shan Shan with the elusive vein-splitting sword. Let go when you must. Venerable Mei, don't provoke a calamity because of a moment's impulse. Li Ju Tian's voice was laced with warning. Venerable Mei will have to think carefully if you cause too much trouble and incite the dissatisfaction of the Holy Land. Right? Li Ju Tian had unexpectedly evaded the question of when the other party would enter the hermitage. Ha ha ha. The man laughed out loud with a bone-chilling voice. His laughter reverberated in the air and didn't stop for a long time. Then he spoke word by word. Li Ju Tian, are you threatening me with the Holy Land? Chapter 331. Today's second update. I'm going to faint. I've typed the word ticket incorrectly. I've corrected it in time. I won't dare. I won't dare. I'm merely advising the Venerable One to reconsider. Li Ju Tian's voice was calm. Venerable Mei, the heavens and earth cannot be insulted. The Holy Lands are not to be trifled with. I'm afraid that you've already committed a taboo. He reconsider? Reconsider? Taboo? Li Ju Tian, don't overestimate yourself. Since when have I ever cared about such taboo? Even if the hermitage, the great golden city, and the illusory ocean of blood were to come to Tian Fa, what can they do to me? The voice was wild and arrogant. 8 years ago, I, Mei, could make Yin Bi Chun never dare to show his face in this world again. Now, I'm confident that I can make the 3 Holy Lands return from Tian Fa in defeat. Venerable Mei has spoken in such a manner. Then this Li will wait and see. Li Ju Tian's figure floated down from the roof as soon as he finished speaking. This indicated that he was done with the conversation. A clear roar was heard from the distant forest. Immediately afterward, a series of earth-shattering rumbling sounds rang out. From the east, west, and north, all 3 directions shook the sky at the same time. Dust and smoke billowed into the sky, covering the sun, moon, and firmament. Countless Xian beasts came out of the forest like a tide. They were lined up in neat formations and were galloping through the open space outside the city in waves. There was only one direction, south. It seemed that the Tian Fa king had also pulled back his forces. However, the Xian beast forces from these 3 directions made everyone in the southern heaven cities scalp tingle. Dozens of golden tigers were lined up in the east. They had a sharp silver horn on their heads and were lined up in front. A snow-white tiger king was at the forefront of the formation. The horn on its head was golden in color as it galloped forward like a gust of wind. After that, the various dark beasts formed a long and orderly square formation, and they flashed past like they were on parade. With such a speed that was like a bolt of lightning, they actually continued for an entire 2 hours. Level 9 Xian beasts, golden tigers. Solitary Eagle was standing behind Li Ju Tian. His eyes were wide open. There are so many of them. I'm afraid the Tiger King, leading them, is already at the peak of level 9. In the west, dozens of beautiful lions that looked like they were carved out of white jade led the way, and they also rolled past. The one in the west is the white jade lion beast. Dongfang Winching explained in a serious tone. Both of them knew that Jun Moxie was still a greenhorn, so he wouldn't know too many high-level Shin beasts. So when they saw him walk over to them, they intentionally explained to him. The sound of heavy footsteps could be heard from the north as hundreds of giant bears led an army of tens of thousands of Shin beasts. The mountain-splitting bear is also a level 9 mystical beast. The Tian Fa forest actually has such a strong foundation. Suddenly, countless silhouettes soared into the sky from the surrounding mountains and valleys when the troops were halfway through. It seemed as if 100 birds were paying homage to a phoenix. All kinds of colorful birds were circling in the sky. After a moment of confusion, all kinds of beasts gathered together and flew over the southern heaven city like a colorful cloud. These are flying Shin beasts. There are too many of them, too many of them. Dongfang Wen Dao sniffled as he opened his mouth to reveal his teeth. Every one of them is at least level 8. Oh my God, how did Li Ju Tian provoke this group of ancestors? How did they create such a big battle array? The sound of rustling in the mountain forest made everyone's scalp tingle. It was the sound of the Shin beasts crawling on the ground. One could only imagine how many of them there were if they listened to the torrential sound. Everyone was standing at high place. Their faces were deathly pale as they looked at the spectacular scene before them. The appearance of these high-leveled Shin beasts would normally cause a sensation and would make people want to buy them at sky-high prices. But now dozens, hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands of them are passing by them. Oh my God, this world is crazy. Not a single one of these thousands of Shin beasts is below level 6. Almost everyone's mouth had turned into an O shape. There was one exception who didn't have an O shape. Jun Moxie and Jun Daxiao were also watching this scene, but no one knew what they were thinking. There were countless question marks in their hearts at this moment. Everyone in the world knew and recognized the two strongest forces of the Shin continent, the Silver Blizzard City and the Shuehan Manor. No one could deny that the strength of these two great clans was transcendent. But now, this mysterious king of Tian Fa had spoken another name. Hermitage, Great Golden City, Illusory Ocean of Blood. What do these names represent? What does it mean? We're the 3 Holy Lands. How tyrannical are the people of these Holy Lands? Why haven't I heard of these names before? He recalled the words that Li Ju Tian had said. The heavens and the earth can't be insulted. The Holy Lands can't be passed down. Li Ju Tian had raised the so-called 3 Holy Lands to the same height as the heavens and the earth in his mind. What does this mean? There were a total of 10 top-notch experts in the world. They were the 8 great masters. Then, there was the hurricane swordsman, Feng Wanyun, and the great assassin, Chu Chihuan. However, these great masters were nothing compared to the number 1 king of Tian Fa. They had only heard his voice, but hadn't seen him. Anyone with ears would have been able to hear it. Anyone with eyes would have been able to see the formidable strength of this number 1 king of Tian Fa. Yinbi Chun didn't dare to show his face 8 years ago. And I'm confident that I can make the 3 Holy Lands return from Tian Fa in defeat. These words were still ringing in everyone's ears. One word, only one word, and it was enough to make the number 1 great master, Yunbi Chun, never to show his face again. What kind of strength does this require? Jun Moxie's face was as calm as still water, while everyone else's faces were filled with shock. However, his heart was in turmoil, and several new questions had arisen in his mind. This number 1 king of Tian Fa possesses such formidable strength. Moreover, he has already decided to show his face. So, why didn't he wait for a few days before the war breaks out? Why didn't he show his face and deal a heavy blow to the Allied forces? The Allied forces would have suffered a fatal blow if he had done so. In fact, It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he would have been able to determine the outcome of the war between the humans and the beast race. Moreover, this conflict has been going on for 2 months now, but he hasn't shown his face yet. So, why is he showing up now? He has already endured for 2 months. Can't he wait for a few more days? It was undeniable that his appearance had created a strong deterrent effect. In fact, it could be said that it was incomparable. His strength was like that of a god in the clouds, and it was an indelible blow to the experts of the Allied forces. Moreover, it had an irreparable effect on the morale of the Allied forces. However, the problem was that he didn't need to do this. What was there to be afraid of if he had such strength? No matter how the Allied forces attacked, he shouldn't have taken it to heart. As long as he showed up, he would have been able to turn the tables and change everything. What's the purpose of all this? This series of questions made Jun Moxie's head spin. He rubbed his eyes and discovered something strange. When the Xian beast had retreated in full force to the south, almost everyone had gone to watch from high vantage point. However, there was one person who hadn't moved from his original spot. At this moment, this person's silhouette seemed so lonely and abrupt. It was a young man. He stood proudly under the Bailey family's flag. His face was calm and indifferent. His posture and his expression clearly expressed one thing. I'm not interested in any of this. Everything that happens here has nothing to do with me. Apart from his indifference, there was a faint feeling that his heart had turned to ashes. It seemed as if he no longer cared about anyone or anything in this world. Jun Moxie suddenly developed an interest in this young man. It was an extremely strong interest. Not because of anything else, but because of his loneliness and indifference. Jun Moxie couldn't help but think of himself in his previous life. He had drifted away from the crowd and was indifferent to everything. Wasn't I like that? Jun Moxie was undoubtedly a freak. Therefore, he wasn't interested in ordinary people's flattery. Those who could attract his attention were always lonely people. At this moment, Dongfang Wenqing and the others had once again gathered around him. When they realized that Jun Moxie wasn't by their side, they immediately gave up on watching the Xian beast hide outside the city and hurriedly looked for him. Right now, Jun Mo Xie was a treasure in the eyes of the three of them, a genuine treasure. The three of them were even imagining that their precious nephew would be brought back to the Dongfang family. Their mother, the old lady of Dongfang, would be delighted to see such an outstanding grandson. Moreover, a mother and son are connected by heart. Perhaps he would be able to awaken their little sister who had been asleep for 10 years. Therefore, the three of them were like old hens that had just hatched their chicks. They wouldn't allow Jun Moxie to escape from their line of sight. Their nephew's miraculous agility wouldn't be a problem for him to protect himself. But the three of them were still worried. The people of the Silver Blizzard City and the Shuehan Manor were present. Those people wouldn't use any gentlemanly methods. They wouldn't be able to cry even if they were to cry in case of an accident. Therefore, they immediately came to Jun Moxie's side once they realized that their nephew wasn't by their side. Even the spectacular scenery outside wouldn't be able to attract their attention. Do you know who that person is? Jun Mo Xie pointed at the young man who was standing alone below. He's a member of the Bailey family. Moreover, he's destined to be abandoned by the Bailey family. What's there to ask? Dongfang Wendao glanced at him and replied disdainfully. Why? Why are they destined to be abandoned? What's the reason? Jun Moxie asked in a puzzled manner. Look at these people. The great families aren't fools. They are well aware of the ferocity of the Xian beast tide. They've been pressured by the Shuehan Manor and Li Ju Tian to send people to help. But they've sent people who are at the peak of Tian Xian's strength. So how can they be weak? Even if they can't defeat such a powerhouse, they'll still have an opportunity to escape. So they won't suffer too much damage in this way. But do you see any of them sending young experts? Dongfang Wenqing's face was full of ridicule. Throwing away their lives? Cannon fodder? Jun Moxie was somewhat surprised. Chapter 332. I don't dare to turn on my computer again. There's a huge rainstorm, and the lightning is as dense as the hairs on my legs, one after another. I don't want to transmigrate. Exactly. Youngsters with such cultivation bases coming to the Heavenly South region to assist in the battle at this critical juncture are basically throwing their lives away. In the face of so many high-level Xian beasts, a mere Yu Xian and an Earth Xian wouldn't have much of a chance of survival. If this wasn't courting death, then what was? To put it bluntly, they're the cannon fodder that you mentioned just now. Dongfang Wenjian smiled mercilessly. Emos, yeah, don't ever think that your movement technique is exquisite. But if I were to throw you into the profound beast tide and surround you from all sides, then no matter how exquisite your movement technique is, it would be difficult for you to escape death. So, don't act recklessly and don't leave our line of sight. But this young man is only 25 or 26 years old, right? He was obviously at the peak of Yu Xian's cultivation level, and was probably only one step away from the Earth Xian realm. With his age and cultivation level, he was a rare genius. Which family wouldn't treasure such a talent? Why was the Bailey clan willing to send such a young man to his death? Isn't that a pity? June Moxie was puzzled. This reason is not worth mentioning at all. It's actually very simple. It's because this person is not a direct descendant of the Bailey clan. He's the son of a concubine. Dongfang Wenqing revealed a regretful smile. This man's name is Bailey Luo Yun. He is a rare genius of the Bailey family. Usually, when a baby is born, the person with the highest cultivation in the family will comb through the meridians of the baby. This is to reduce the number of illnesses and also to lay the foundation for the cultivation of Xian Qi. When this Bailey Luo Yun was born, there was no one to sort out his meridians, but he still started cultivating Xian Qi at the age of 3. At the age of 10, he successfully broke through the limit of the 9th grade Xian Qi. At the age of 15, he broke through the peak of the silver grade and reached the gold grade. At the age of 22, he broke through the gold grade again and became a Yu Xian warrior. Looking at his current cultivation, he is indeed at the peak of the Yu Xian realm. Among the younger generation, he was already recognized as the #1 genius. Very few people could compare to him in terms of aptitude. Of course, you're not included in this limit. You're only at the Yu Xian realm, yet you're able to fight with a powerhouse like Shun Xian and even win one move. You're a real demon. Such an outstanding talent. Even if he isn't a legitimate son, he shouldn't be treated like this, right? Even though he wasn't a legitimate son, he still had the bloodline of the Bailey family. Even though he couldn't be the successor of the Bailey family, he was still a rare expert of the younger generation of the Bailey family. Based on his age and his current progress, it wasn't hard to imagine that within 10 years, he would certainly be able to reach the level of Tian Xian. He might even be able to reach the level of Shun Xian within 30 years. Could it be that such a character had to give up on such a rare genius just because he wasn't a legitimate son? Aren't the Bailey family's actions a little too unwise? June Moxie was flabbergasted as he heard this. This matter was simply incomprehensible to him. In fact, it was hard for him to even imagine it. One must know that such an outstanding, young, and limitless cultivation genius was a rarity even in the Silver Blizzard City or the Shuehan Manor. In fact, it was hard to find even a handful of such geniuses in the entire Xian continent. It was believed that any family that possessed such a genius would treat him like a precious jewel and treasure him. Not to mention anything else, but one could imagine how much the 3 Dongfang masters cherished Jun Daxiao. That's not the only reason. The main reason was because of his father. His father was the eldest son of his grandfather, who had raped a maidservant when he was drunk. However, the Bailey family had never acknowledged their status, so they had been oppressed by the family. His bloodline had become even more estranged. The more talented he was, and the faster his cultivation progress was. But the more miserable he had been oppressed. His father had an awkward status in the Bailey family. In fact, they were equivalent to servants in the Bailey family. In fact, they weren't even as favored as maids. Therefore, his desire for vengeance was exceptionally strong, especially after his Xian Qi had advanced to the Jade Xian realm. Then he did something by chance. There was a look of pity on Dongfang Wenqing's face. In fact, he hadn't taken the initiative to do this. The process was very simple. He had gone to his house to cause trouble for the Bailey family. He had taught a fierce lesson to the Bailey family. Moreover, he had been particularly ruthless. This had aroused the Bailey family's anger. His Shin-Chi cultivation had been much faster and more outstanding than those direct descendants who had relied on external forces to advance. Moreover, their meridians had been sorted out since childhood. However, he had lost his status in the Bailey family. The reason why the Bailey family didn't kill him on the spot was because they cared about their kinship. However, now that he's here, it's obvious that some people in the Bailey family don't intend to let him off. This trip to the Southern Heaven region was undoubtedly a good opportunity to kill him with a borrowed knife. So that's how it is. Jun Moxie heaved a long sigh of relief. He murmured, Bailey, Luo Yun. His eyes flickered. It was hard to tell what he was thinking, but we think that the Bailey family is destroying themselves by doing this. It's just as you judged, Moxie. This kid's natural talent is outstanding, and he's only slightly inferior to you at most. I believe that as long as he has 30 to 50 years of time, I'm afraid another supreme-level expert will be born. You must know that the emergence of a great master-level powerhouse in an aristocratic family, especially one that belongs to the Jianghu, then they'll be able to break away from their original scope in one fell swoop and become one of the super forces. This is tantamount to a qualitative leap. The Shuehan Manor and the Silver Blizzard City are examples of this. This kind of opportunity would only appear once every several hundred years, or even a dozen generations for any aristocratic family. However, the Bailey family had let go of such an opportunity. I felt that it was a pity, but I was even more puzzled. I didn't know whether the Bailey family was too short-sighted or if they were afraid that Bailey Luo Yun would take revenge. Or is there another reason behind this? Dongfang Wenqing shook her head. She chuckled and said, However, it's a pity. After all, it doesn't have much to do with us. In fact, it's a good thing for our aristocratic families to eliminate such a potential future expert. So, everyone would be happy to see this happen. After all, the rise of every hero is bound to trample on the corpses of countless enemies. And the hands of every powerhouse are bound to be stained with blood. But we're all part of the 9 great families. So, even if we're not mortal enemies, we're still potential competitors. The people of the aristocratic families had already come down from the high ground. Their leaders were walking towards the meeting hall. Dongfang Wenqing looked at them from afar and said, I'll accompany your third uncle inside. Otherwise, those dregs of the Silver Blizzard City will continue to mock and ridicule us. But they won't dare to be too presumptuous in my presence. She smiled faintly and walked away. After a while, she pushed Jun Wui's wheelchair inside. Jun Moxie looked at the third uncle sitting in the wheelchair and suddenly thought, third uncle's legs have been healed. But I don't know when he'll be able to stand up from the wheelchair. When will the blood general be able to stand proudly in front of the people of the world and show off his proud demeanor? All of this depends on strength, absolute strength. Strength is equivalent to talent. Jun Moxie suddenly strode towards Bailey Luo Yun as this thought crossed his mind. The people of the Bailey family had already returned by this time. The 3 of them returned to their tent while chatting and laughing. They didn't even look at Bailey Luo Yun, who was standing at the entrance. Bailey Xiongfeng was the leader of the group. He looked straight ahead and entered the meeting hall with an indifferent expression on his face. Bailey Luo Yun's indifferent eyes gazed at the hustle and bustle in the sky. He smiled bitterly in his heart. He thought, I don't know how many days I'll be able to watch such a chaotic scene. Will being torn apart by 10,000 beasts be my only ending? Bailey Luo Yun's heart was clear as to why his family had sent him out for this matter. If Luo Yun doesn't die, the Bailey family won't be able to rest in peace. This was the evaluation that Master Da Xiao's father had given him. He was the current master of the Bailey family, and he had been living under this huge shadow ever since he had broken through to the 9th grade at the age of 10. Sometimes he felt that it was ironic when he thought about it. In other clans, as long as a child had a little bit of talent, he or she would receive the full support of the clan. And Everyone could see his or her talent. So, why was he treated like this in the Bailey family? That man was afraid that I would run away. So, he didn't hesitate to use my father's life to threaten me to come to the southern heaven city to participate in the war. Why did he do this? My father would evade my questions every time I asked him. He wanted to say something, but then hesitated. The most valuable sentence he had ever said was, "Alas, Luo Yun, your desire for revenge is too strong. There are some things that you know now. But it's not a good thing, desire for revenge. I don't want to stir up trouble. Would I have disregarded the consequences if I hadn't been forced to the point where I couldn't bear it? Everything that had happened that day was right in front of my eyes. How could a man not resist in the face of such a thing? Could it be that there's some inside story that I don't know about? I'll get to the bottom of this mystery if I'm lucky enough to survive this time." Bailey Luo Yun's expression was indifferent. He turned around and was about to enter the tent. It's true that they don't care about me, but I don't see them as a family either. The sooner I die, the better it would be for them. But isn't it the same for me? Suddenly, he saw a youngster walking towards him. He didn't recognize this youngster, but he knew that his name was Jun Moxie. He had heard that this youngster was a debauchee and a prodigal second generation. He was very similar to some people in his family. He didn't need to take a second look to know that this Jun Moxie had come a look for him. That was because the direction in which Jun Moxie was walking was very clear. Not to mention, the two eyes on his face were staring at him with a strange expression. Bailey Luo Yun? Jun Moxie tilted his head and looked him up and down. Jun Moxie? The Jun family's third young master? Bailey Luo Yun's face was as indifferent as ever. He looked at this youngster who had suddenly come to look for him. He didn't seem surprised or happy at all. He didn't even try to guess why this youngster had come to look for him. Find a place to talk? Come with me. Jun Moxie invited him. He had asked for his opinion, but his tone had been firm. In fact, he had even added a commanding tone. He had been a proud and aloof assassin in his previous life. His personality had changed a lot in this life, but he knew how to deal with such a proud and aloof person. One should never hope that the opposite party would take the initiative when dealing with such a person. Even if their heart desired it to the extreme, it would still be difficult for them to open their golden mouths. After all, the hitman Jun himself was such a person. Only by taking control of everything in one's own hands and grasping the absolute initiative, then the other party would unconsciously act according to one's arrangements. Even if the opposite party was disgusted in their heart, they would still follow your rhythm because they were unwilling to accept it. Jun Moxie wanted to even out his disadvantage and seek the right to talk on equal terms. At the very least, it would be an opportunity to talk on equal terms. I'm not familiar with you, so I don't want to talk. Bailey Luo Yun indifferently turned his head and was about to enter the tent. Even he was disgusted by the tent. I've heard that you're one of the few Xian-Chi geniuses in the world. Don't tell me you don't dare. Jun Moxie took a step forward. Bailey Luo Yun's tall and straight figure suddenly stopped. I've heard that you're only 26. You're at the peak of Yu Xian's realm. But you don't dare to talk to me? Are you afraid that I'll plot against you? Jun Moxie smiled mischievously. Bailey Luo Yun suddenly turned around. His face was still expressionless, and his eyes were calm as he calmly looked at Jun Moxie. So, the rumors were wrong. It's no wonder. 9 out of 10 rumors can't be trusted. Jun Moxie turned around and walked away. He left behind a few words. I shouldn't have come with such courage. Jun Moxie didn't walk back to his tent. Instead, he walked towards the periphery. The sound of footsteps could be heard behind him. Bailey Luo Yun was quietly following him. A trace of pride flashed in Jun Moxie's eyes. If he said, "Can you talk to me? Why can't we talk?" Bailey Luo Yun would have gone back to his tent and taken a nap if he had asked that question. But he wouldn't have followed me like this. Jun Dashao didn't turn around. Instead, he walked faster and faster. The speed of his agility was shocking. Bailey Luo Yun didn't seem to have any intention to speak either. He still followed Jun Dashao at a close distance. He didn't fall behind much. 2 youngsters who had reached the same realm of Yu Xian's were chasing after each other. Everyone's attention was focused on the meeting hall. So no one had noticed these two outstanding youngsters. June Moxie gradually increased his speed. He was getting faster and faster. In fact, it seemed as if he had left the ground and was flying. The distance between them was getting bigger and bigger. Bailey Luo Yun's indifferent eyes revealed astonishment and shock. I can't believe that this notorious Lord Dashao is faster than me. He didn't want to admit defeat, but he couldn't catch up with him no matter how hard he tried. Moreover, he couldn't shorten the distance even by a little bit. Instead, the distance between them was getting bigger and bigger. I've already lost this competition of speed. Bailey Luo Yin didn't want to admit it, but he clearly knew that this youngster was much faster than him, even though he was younger than him. At least, he was faster than him in terms of speed. June Moxie took the lead and walked up to a small hidden slope more than 5 kilometers away from the city. He sat down without a care for his image. Then, he patted the grass next to him and said, "Sit down." Nobody responded. Bailey Luo Yin was still standing as straight as a javelin. He was used to being nervous for a long time, so he wouldn't allow himself to relax even for a moment. That was because all the so-called cousins of the same generation couldn't wait to put him to death. He had long been used to being nervous like this. However, there was a trace of admiration in the depths of his eyes. "What's your purpose?" Bailey Luo Yun asked. He was a man of few words. Jun Mo Xia wasn't used to speaking at length. Therefore, he kept everything in his heart. The fact that he was willing to take the initiative to ask this question was already because of Jun Mo Xia's outstanding skills. Jun Mo Xia was younger than him, but his cultivation wasn't inferior to his. "You've come to throw away your life." Jun Moxie didn't turn his head around. Jun Moxie hadn't turned his head around since they had left the field. It seemed as if he was very sure that Bailey Luo Yun would follow him. Moreover, Bailey Luo Yun couldn't surpass him. However, this was what made Bailey Luo Yun feel the most uncomfortable. "What does it have to do with you?" Bailey Luo Yun was as indifferent as before. "Indeed, it has nothing to do with me. After all, your stink won't reach my family's land if you die." Jun Moxie smiled, "But I'm curious. Why did you come even though you knew that you've come to throw away your life?" "This has nothing to do with you." Bailey Luo Yun was somewhat angry. What is this lad talking about? What is he trying to say? "Someone is threatening you, right?" Jun Moxie muttered. "Moreover, the person who threatened you is the person you care about the most? Well, that must be the case. Otherwise, you wouldn't have come even though you knew that you were doomed. You don't look like a fool." Bailey Luo Yun finally became silent. His opponent's guess isn't wrong. Moreover, he has accurately grasped my weakness. I haven't said anything, but he has seen through me. It's rare to see someone so young. "You want to be the master of the Bailey clan. Is that right?" Jun Moxie held a half-withered stalk of grass in his mouth. He seemed to be talking to Bai Yun. "You're very calm, cold, and cruel. You dare to do what you do, and you dare to take responsibility for what you've done. You're very vengeful, and your desire for power is enormous. You want to take revenge, but you don't have enough power. You don't have a future in the Bailey clan, but you yearn for the greatest power in the clan. That's the only way you can take revenge. What does this have to do with you? You're talking to me like this. It's ridiculous." Bailey Luo Yun's words were very impolite. Moreover, his tone was very annoying. However, Jun Moxie knew that he had hit the nail on the head. He had spoken from the depths of this indifferent youth's heart. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spoken so much with such an eccentric personality. "Indeed, this has nothing to do with me. But you'll never be able to fulfill your wish if you continue to stay in the Bailey clan." Jun Moxie stood up. Then, he suddenly turned around and looked straight into Bailey Luo Yun's eyes. Then, he spoke word by word. "Follow me, and I can fulfill your wish." "You?" Bailey Luo Yun sized him up with a lingling look. "Why should I?" "The Jun family's fortunes aren't necessarily better. The Bailey family is one of the 9 great families. So, I know about the Jun family's affairs. Even now, the Bailey family can't be compared to the Jun family." "You're wrong. The Jun family's fate has nothing to do with you. You only need to tell me what I can do for you to follow me." Jun Moxie smiled. "Tell me your conditions." you should know that you don't have the slightest hope in the Bailey family. In fact, you'll die 10 times out of 10 in this journey. Believe in me, and you'll have the opportunity to escape from death. You'll have no choice but to accept it, even if I'm lying to you. Because I'm afraid that you'll die in this Tion Fa forest in a few days if you don't grab onto this life-saving straw. And even your bones will become a meal for the Xian beasts. Bailey Luo Yun calmly looked at him. Jun Moxie smiled back at him. A good while passed. Then Bailey Luo Yun suddenly tilted his head and spoke in a soft voice. So what if I die? Life and death are nothing to me. Living in this world isn't much fun. Death may be a release for me. At least, it's a good release for me. Release? But I'm different from you. In fact, I'll choose to die after I've taken my revenge. Jun Moxie calmly replied. Revenge? Bailey Luo Yun's eyes flashed. It seemed as if Jun Moxie had spoken his mind. So, he suddenly turned his back to Jun Moxie and spoke word by word. I have 2 conditions. I'll follow you after Tion Fa, and if you fulfill them. First, defeat me. Defeat me with your own strength. I know that you're very strong, but I need to confirm that only the number 1 person of the younger generation is worthy of my following. Second, the Bailey family has sent 5 people to the Southern Heaven City. Tian Xian and the other 2. Count me in. I want the other 4 to die. I'll follow you for 10 years if you can fulfill these 2 conditions. I'll still leave if you can't fulfill my wish within 10 years. On the other hand, not only will my life be yours if you fulfill them, but the entire Bailey family will also be yours. These were Bailey Luo Yun's conditions. Jun Moxie watched Bailey Luo Yun walk away with a straight back. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. This lad didn't turn his head even once until his silhouette disappeared from my sight. These conditions aren't a problem for me. This young master can deal with you right now. As for those small fries of the Bailey family, it won't be difficult for me to send them back home. Why can't you give me a challenging condition? Lad, just wait for me to train you. Jun Moxie secretly returned to the campsite using his swift agility technique. He saw that the 20,000-strong army had already set up their tents in an orderly manner. The tents were placed against the city walls, even though they were in the city. They were guarded by barricades, traps, and archers lying in ambush. The front of the camp was even more heavily guarded. The patrolling soldiers had their own duties. 2 groups of soldiers crossed each other at the border of different camps at every moment. The warning gongs were divided into 4 groups. 2 groups would take turns. 1 group would be in the light, and the other would be in the dark. They were ready at any time. The security of the army had reached such an extent. It could be said that such an army would never have to worry about a sneak attack under any circumstances. Moreover, it could ensure that the soldiers who were resting in shifts would get the best sleep. It was a pity that there was no place for these ordinary soldiers to use their skills in the Xian beast tide. Jun Moxie was even more certain of one thing when he saw the densely packed Xian beast tide. These 20,000-strong army, along with the commanding officers and the disciples of the aristocratic families, have come to throw away their lives. They're all cannon fodder. Jun Moxie sighed softly. He then walked toward his own camp. He had just walked through the gate when he felt that the atmosphere was unusual. Guan Qinghan was trying to comfort Duga Xiaoyi. Duga Xiaoyi's face was stained with tears. It seemed as if she had been greatly wronged. What's wrong? Boo-hoo. Brother Mo Xie. Little White. Little White is gone. Duga Xiaoyi threw herself at him and burst into tears when she saw him return. Hey, I thought it was something serious. It's gone if it's gone. Jun Moxie smiled bitterly in his heart. Bringing Little White here is akin to releasing a tiger back into the mountains. Besides, the number 1 Xian Beast King had issued an order to gather all the Xian beasts. So, how could Little White be an exception? It would be strange if Little White was still here. Boo-hoo. I must find him. He hasn't eaten lunch yet. Duga Xiaoyi was extremely distressed. Little White is my precious baby. All right, we'll look for him when we have time. Maybe he went out to play and will come back soon. Jun Moxie comforted her in a weak voice. In the depths of the Tion Fa forest, Long Crane and Bear Mountain were standing respectfully behind them. Two other Xian beasts were standing behind them. The Xian beast kings were squatting behind them. They were using their tails to sweep the ground from time to time. They were cleaning the area until it was almost spotless. A strange silhouette was standing in front of them. Even his hair and feet were shrouded in black cloth. It was so black that even his eyes couldn't be seen. They couldn't even see his silhouette, let alone his face. Tell me, what's going on? I've been in closed-door training for less than 2 years. How did you manage to stir up such a big commotion? You've summoned all the experts of the continent. You got guts, ah? The voice belonged to the Xian Beast King, who had spoken to Li Ju Tian before. Big brother, this. Bear Mountain and Long Crane looked at each other in dismay. They stammered, but couldn't say anything. 3 million Xian beasts of level 6 and above have been driven out of Tian Fa. You've exposed the strength of our Tian Fa in front of everyone. The black-cloaked man sneered. That's a big move, ah. Is it worth mobilizing such a large force just to deal with an insignificant Li Ju Tian? Big brother, it's not all about this. Long Crane smacked his lips. He was about to say something, but he swallowed it back down. What's going on? The black-cloaked man's robes fluttered, and a boundless, oppressive aura spread out. I want to know the whole story. Fourth Bear, you tell me. I. Bear Mountain's entire body trembled as he stuttered. A silhouette flashed, and Bear Mountain let out a long howl. His majestic body rolled away like a rubber ball. A loud rumbling sound was heard behind him as he rolled away. He had crashed into 3 large trees and had broken them in the process. Come back, Bear Mountain shouted. He covered his back and grimaced in pain as he ran back. Then he stood there in a well-behaved manner. Speak. Bear Mountain had a bitter expression on his face. He had started from the time he had received a Xian core of a level 9 Xian beast in Tianxiang City. Then he told him about how he and Long Crane had gone to steal it. Then he told him everything that had happened afterwards. Chapter 333. Today's first update. Yes, Long Crane was the first to give an affirmative answer. Then he continued, I'm very sure of this. He had used his chi to test it out on me and the fourth brother at that time. Indeed, the chi in our bodies had become 10 times more active after he had used his special method. Even the bottleneck that had been holding us back for a long time had loosened up. Therefore, I can guarantee that there's no doubt about this matter. Long Crane spoke in a serious manner. So, there's really such a thing, the black cloak man muttered. His voice was somewhat indistinct. There's nothing wrong with it if that's the case. But why didn't you and the fourth brother try to capture him? You could have gotten rid of him once and for all if you could have controlled him. That man's strength couldn't compare to Li Ju Tian's, right? How could there be such a super expert in the secular world? You and the fourth brother wouldn't have been any weaker than Li Ju Tian if you had attacked him in your original form. At the very least, you should have tried to probe him. Long Crane smiled bitterly. Do you think we didn't want to, eldest brother? That's why we proposed this competition. But you don't know how much pressure that person gave us at that time. Just based on his aura alone, to put it bluntly, he gave us a much more oppressive feeling than boss. Moreover, he had the means to help us increase our cultivation. So, his strength couldn't have been worse. We would have had to bid farewell to this matter of advancing if we hadn't been able to defeat him in one strike. After 3 rounds of competition, Old Bear and I willingly admit defeat. We weren't a match for him. It's not like you don't know how tempting this matter was for us. The fourth brother and I have been trapped here for nearly 40 years. We haven't seen the second brother for many years, but he may not be able to advance either. Moreover, that man's conditions were very simple. He only wanted to stop the Shui Han Manor from moving north. Moreover, he wanted Li Ju Tian's son to be bettered in for a month or 2. It wasn't a difficult task, so the fourth brother and I agreed without much discussion. Indeed, it wasn't a difficult task. In fact, we were the ones who had the advantage. But how did things end up like this? Half of the world's profound practitioners have actually gathered at our doorstep. The black-robed man leaned slightly to the side. In fact, my original intention was to take advantage of the night to set the Shui Hun Manor on fire. Then, I would personally take advantage of the chaos and beat up Li Ju Tian's son. Then, no one would be able to find out about it. But Big Bear, he brazenly jumped into the Shui Hun Manor in broad daylight and shouted that he would break Li Tungyun's legs. Then, he arrogantly asked the other party to take the initiative to bring Li Tungyun out so that he could break his legs. Let alone Li Ju Tian, even I wouldn't have agreed. Long Crane fiercely complained to Big Bear. Third brother. Fuck you, Crane Third. You sold me out just like that? Don't I want to get it over with as soon as possible? What a waste of time you propose. Besides, sneaking around like that isn't satisfying at all. What if they insist that it has nothing to do with us after we're done? Bear Mountain shouted with a flushed face and neck. He hadn't even finished speaking when he felt a chill run down his spine. So, he didn't dare to speak again. Who would have thought that the Shui Hun Manor wouldn't listen to Big Bear's words? So, we started fighting on the same day. We had the upper hand and even injured some of their men. But Li Tungyun didn't come face to face with us. However, the master of life and death, Shi Changshao, suddenly appeared at the Shui Hun Manor the next day. So, it became very difficult for us to take advantage of the situation. So, we continued fighting for several days. But it wasn't a big deal at first. Li Tungyun wasn't there, but the Shui Hun Manor was basically destroyed. But that old dog Li Ju Tian unexpectedly returned at this critical juncture. Long Crane's lips twitched, and he didn't say anything else. But his eyes evaded, and his face revealed an indignant expression. You went to their door to cause trouble, and even asked them to hand over their young lord so that you could break his legs. And you still blame them for not cooperating? You're still angry? According to your logic, Li Ju Tian would have died of anger. The Shui Hun Manor is a huge place, and it's gone just like that. Which force would be willing to endure such humiliation? The black-cloaked man sneered. Do you two really think that there's no one else in this world? That's ridiculous. You acted in the dark, but you acted so brazenly. Bear Mountain, it's said that you have the heart of a bear and the guts of a leopard. But I like to see how big a bear's guts are. I like to see if it's bigger than a leopard's. Bear Mountain was tongue-tied. He stammered twice, and then closed his mouth. What happened after that? The black-cloaked man asked. After that, we started a fight. Then, I suddenly discovered that Li Ju Tian's body was emitting a Xiandan's aura. It seemed that he had swallowed some kind of Xiandan. Moreover, it was at least level 9. It was similar to the aura of the Panther King. But it hadn't started to circulate. So, I became suspicious. Long Crane's face became angry as he continued. The Panther King had mysteriously disappeared 2 years ago. Old Bear and I had been investigating for a long time, but we hadn't been able to find any news. Then we heard that a peak level 9 Xiandan had appeared in the Tianxiang city. So we went there with that in mind, but we didn't expect that it wasn't the case. But we went to the Shui Hun Manor in accordance with the bet made by that mysterious expert. But we found the Panther King's Xiandan's aura on Li Ju Tian's body. The Panther King, the Black Cloak man's voice tightened. The real Panther King? What's going on? Tell me everything you know. His tone had become very cold. I was wondering why I hadn't seen the shadow of the Panther King this time. But it turned out that it had been killed and eaten. Even the Xiandan had become a part of someone else's body. Good. Third brother, fourth brother, the two of you have managed Tian Fa very well during my closed-door training. Even the Panther King has disappeared. And you're telling me that it has mysteriously disappeared? Very good. Long Crane and Bear Mountain's complexions changed. They knelt down with a thud. Their foreheads were sweating profusely. The two of them could hear it. And they also understood that as long as their boss spoke with this kind of intermittent tone, it meant that he was extremely furious. It seemed that the two brothers were in deep trouble this time. The Tian Fa forest had 10 Beast Kings when the king was still alive. Even the 3 Holy Lands didn't dare to look them in the eye. Moreover, it was known as the most dangerous place in the universe. What kind of glory was that? Ever since the king's immortalization, the 9 beast kings were all disheartened and went into seclusion. That's how we rose to prominence. In just a few hundred years, there were 12 new beast kings. I thought that even if we couldn't continue the glory of the past, we could at least maintain the prestige of Tian Fa. But who would have thought that in just a few decades, the second brother, the Eagle King, will be cheated away by Yun Bi Chun in a bet? He actually became that old man's mount. He has become a disgrace to Tian Fa. The 6th brother, the Lion King, and the 7th brother, the Monkey King, were beaten back to their original forms by the 8 great masters 60 years ago. They haven't been able to recover in the past 60 years. His voice was desolate. Behind Big Bear, the White Jade Lion Beast King and the Golden-Furred Monkey Beast King lowered their heads sadly. The 2 Beast Kings that had been beaten back to their original forms were the 2 of them. The 5th brother left Tian Fa 30 years ago, but he was suddenly besieged by 9 mysterious Shun Xian experts and died a violent death. Even Xian Dan's whereabouts are unknown. Now, the 11th brother, the Leopard King, is dead. Even Xian Dan is in Li Ju Tian's stomach. Of the 12 Beast Kings, only the few of us are left. The Crane King, the Bear King, the Snake King, the Tiger King, and the Eagle King. The aura of the Black Robe Man was getting more and more repressed. He was getting more and more furious. He suddenly shouted, "Is this still Tian Fa? Is it worthy of being called Tian Fa's most dangerous place?" You 7 Beast Kings and millions of brothers attacked together, but you couldn't even take down the Shui Han Manor? Huh? The aura of his entire body exploded like a bomb in the Tian Fa forest. The fierce aura dispersed in all directions. The 7 Beast Kings didn't resist. They didn't dare to resist. So they were sent flying by this enormous aura. All the trees within a 300-meter radius were snapped in half. Then they were turned into sawdust in midair. A large piece of land had appeared on the ground. Not even a blade of grass had grown. The might of Tian Fa's strongest Beast King had reached such a level. Big brother, please calm down. This is a critical moment for you. You mustn't be so angry. The 7 Beast Kings knelt on the ground and pleaded bitterly. The Black Robe Man was hidden in his black robe, but he looked up at the sky and sighed. Snake King, Tiger King, Eagle King, you 3 are already at the peak level, right? The black-robed man exhaled. He seemed to have calmed down as he calmly asked. A golden-robed man, a black-robed man, and a green-robed girl bowed and replied, "Yes." Apart from Long Crane and Big Bear, these 3 were the only ones who were still in their human form. The White Lion Beast King and the golden-haired Monkey Beast King revealed a look of admiration and indignation in their eyes. The 2 of them had reached this level 60 years ago, but they had been beaten back to their original forms. So they hadn't been able to reach their original level no matter how hard they'd cultivated for the last 60 years. It's time for a breakthrough. But where can we find so many Tian Fa's sacred fruits? The black-robed man sighed. Everyone remained silent, and the forest suddenly became quiet. There's no turning back since we've started this war. So we'll make the situation as big as possible. I want to re-establish the reputation of the Tian Fa forest as the most dangerous place in the universe after this war. We may not be able to make the 3 holy lands recognize us, but we can't let Li Ju Tian and Yun Bi Chen enter Tian Fa as they please. Chapter 334. The Might of Heavenly Punishment, unparalleled in the universe. The might of Tian Fa, the most ominous place. Long Crane and the others raised their arms and shouted at the same time. The White Jade Lion Beast King and the Golden-Furred Monkey King also looked up to the sky and roared. Tian Fa is not allowed to enter the inner lands, and they are not allowed to disturb the commoners. These are the rules of the Tian Fa forest, and these rules cannot be broken. Bear Mountain, you will lead the Tiger King, Monkey King, Lion King, and Snake King to fight against the Tian Fa forest. Long Crane, You and the Eagle King's aerial forces are to be ready at any time. Since I'm going to fight a few fierce battles. I'm going to make them feel pain and fear. Then I'm going to consider whether it's going to be a large-scale battle or a pinnacle battle. But the final decision is to make them beg me. Understand? Yes. Both of them answered in unison. Fourth brother Xiong, how are your injuries now? The black-robed man asked. I'm fine now. Thank you, boss, for helping me resolve it, Bear Mountain said gratefully. If it weren't for boss, how could this vein-severing elusive heart sword be destroyed so easily? There's one more thing. I'm guessing that Big Bear is Li Ju Tian's main target this time. Long Crane cautiously spoke up. Oh, what was the reason? Li Ju Tian isn't an unwise man. So, killing the fourth brother would be tantamount to forming an irreconcilable enmity with the Tian Fa clan. Would he dare? The black-robed man snorted. Long Crane replied in a dejected manner. Perhaps others don't know this, but we do. The world often uses the phrase bear's heart and leopard's gall to describe a person's boldness. But we know that this isn't the case. Li Ju Tian has obviously eaten the Panther King's Xiandan. So, we can infer that. So, he still needs Old Bear's heart? The black-robed man snorted angrily. Yes, a person can't completely absorb the Xiandan even if they have a very high Xian Qi cultivation. And Li Ju Tian has obviously encountered this problem. But the Panther King's Xiandan and the Big Bear's heart will not only be able to completely absorb the Panther King's Xiandan, but will also be able to double the effect. At the same time, if he also consumed the Old Bear Xian pill, he would be able to double his strength on top of the double foundation. That was 4 times the effect. At that time, in the entire Xian continent, would there be anyone who could be a match for absolute heaven? Even if we become mortal enemies with Tian Fa, what does it matter? Long Crane's face revealed an expression of extreme hatred. Li Ju Tian didn't even think about me when he attacked this time. In fact, he went straight for Big Bear every time. Every move and every style was a sure kill technique. The viciousness of his intentions was obvious. This is the real reason why Fourth Brother Bear and I initiated this beast tide. Li Ju Tian, the black-robed man's body trembled as he spat out those 3 words through gritted teeth. He hatefully said, no wonder he was willing to lower himself to issue the great master's summon. No wonder he didn't hesitate to use the elusive heart vein splitting sword to deal with Fourth Brother Bear. Humph. So, he was planning to kill us in one strike. Moreover, he planned to use the entire continent's Xian Qi experts to accomplish his ambition. What a vicious heart. What a wishful thinking. You all go back and prepare. Everyone below level 7 will return to the Tian Fa forest for this operation. We won't need them this time. All of you, focus on your cultivation. The black-robed man's black robe fluttered as he continued. Qin Sun Serpent Queen, your speed is relatively slow. So, you must pay attention to the flying thread, golden centipede, and 7-star centipede. But you can't participate for the time being. The flying thread, golden centipede, and 7-star centipede were the most venomous snakes in the Tian Fa forest. They were also the fastest snakes. They could come and go without a trace. So, it was impossible for an average person to find them. The green-clothed girl, Snake King, bowed respectfully. Then, she turned around and left after receiving the order. Third brother, fourth brother, you mentioned that the mysterious man was very strong. His oppressive aura was even stronger than mine. So, how's his cultivation compared to mine? I want to hear the truth. The black-robed man's voice was somewhat hoarse. That man's cultivation is very high. So, I'm afraid that his cultivation isn't below yours. In fact, it's more or less on par with yours. Long Crane thought for a long time. Then, he replied in a very cautious manner. However, Big Bear didn't have a brain. So, he couldn't see through Long Crane's roundabout meaning. So, he grinned and said, Third brother, why are you talking nonsense? That man's cultivation is truly unfathomable. In fact, he's much stronger than you, eldest brother. I'm not being polite. I'm guessing that he can beat 3 or 5 of you. He can beat 1 or 2 of you. I deserve to die. I deserve to die. I didn't mean that. My damn mouth. Eldest brother, you're the best. What I wanted to say was, you can beat 10 of him. A heart-wrenching scream was heard. He hadn't even finished speaking when his entire body started to tremble. He suddenly came to his senses, but it was too late. His entire body was smashed head first into the ground with a bang sound. Then, only a slight cracking sound could be heard. It was the sound of numerous tree roots being smashed into the ground. From what the two of you are saying, this person's cultivation is definitely higher than mine, right? That's what you're trying to say, right? It's a waste of time to talk nonsense. The black-robed man's voice was somewhat gloomy. The black-robed man's voice was a little gloomy. He clapped his hands as if nothing had happened and stepped on Big Bear's only exposed feet. A muffled groan of pain came from the ground, and Big Bear disappeared with a swoosh. Even if we include the 3 sacred lands, besides the masters of the 3 sacred lands and those old fogies who don't know what's good for them, there's absolutely no one with a higher cultivation than me. Who exactly is this person? How can he have such a cultivation? The black-robed man paced back and forth. He was somewhat puzzled, but a muffled groan of pain would be heard from the ground with every step he took. This man's origin is indeed mysterious. His strength is also very profound, but I can guarantee that he's not from the 3 holy lands. Long Crane spoke in a serious manner. His body was perfectly straight, and he was very meticulous. Even his long mouth appeared very serious. Long Crane had learned his lesson from Bear Mountain's mistakes, so he had repeated every word he had spoken several times in his mind. He was afraid that this misfortune would befall on him. Why do you say that? The black-robed man continued to pace back and forth. Not even a speck of dust was stirred up by his every step, but his strength continued to penetrate through the ground. Then, his feet landed on the pitiful Bear Mountain's body again and again. He wouldn't hurt him. Instead, he would use his head as a drill to drill deeper into the ground. Bear Mountain's skin was very thick, so he couldn't hurt him. The black-robed man finally felt that he had stepped on empty air. He had finally succeeded in stomping this guy into the yellow mud. Then he stopped in satisfaction. Boss, you also know that all the old farts from the 3 holy lands have an extremely annoying aura on their bodies. This is something that can be clearly felt by people at our level. However, that person's aura doesn't make us feel disgusted or annoyed. Instead, it makes us feel a sense of intimacy from the bottom of our hearts. It's an indescribable feeling. It's the kind of feeling that makes us want to get close to him. I understand. It's just intuition. The black-robed man waved his hand to interrupt him. Intuition. Long Crane's expression became strange. Aren't these 2 different things? Finally, he couldn't help but sneak a glance at his boss and mumble to himself. What are you looking at? What are you thinking? Don't tell me that my analysis is wrong. The black-robed man asked fiercely. His voice was heavy and oppressive. Long Crane felt as if he was being tied up by an invisible force. Sure enough, you're worthy of being called boss. Boss is wise, haha. Long Crane was so afraid that he blurted out what he wanted to say. So, he quickly changed his words and forced a smile. Long Crane, 3rd brother Crane, you've become quite capable, the black-robed man said in a gloomy manner. Boss, spare me. Long Crane begged for mercy, but his body had already been sent flying. He had stuck close to the ground and had plowed a deep trench with his body. At the same time, a small mound swelled up on one side. Then it burst out of the ground with a puff sound. Big Bear drilled out of the mound with his head and body covered in yellow mud. He hadn't even gotten out of the mound when he saw the scene in front of him. So he spat out a mouthful of yellow mud and gloatingly laughed. Crane third, Crane third. It turns out that you'll have such a day. Long Crane's face was covered in dirt as he crawled up from 70 or 80 feet away. Then he snorted and said, What's wrong with me having met my end? It's better than someone being smashed into the ground. You've fallen into a cesspool with your head and face covered in yellow mud. But you're still so proud of yourself? What did you just spit out? It's yellow. Bear Mountain was left speechless. He knew that his third brother was trying to disgust him, but he still felt disgusted. "I'd like to meet this mysterious expert if I have the time. I'd like to see who's better and who's worse." The black-robed man snorted coldly and pulled the attention of the two men back from their quarrel. "It's a pity that our agreement has been delayed by more than a month, but we weren't able to complete that task within the time limit. That damned Li Ju Tian. It's all his fault." Bear Mountain stamped his feet in a depressed manner, and the yellow mud on his body fell with a pa-pa-pa sound. "But he said that he wants us to go to the Tianxiang City Jun family to look for Jun Wui after we've completed our task." Long Crane suddenly thought of something, since he said that. Then Jun Wui must be related to him. We should be able to find him as long as we follow this trail. And the Tianxiang Empire has dispatched Jun Wui to deal with the Xianbi's tide, as far as I know. And this man is in the Southern Heaven City. If that's the case, then we'll have to plan carefully. Then we'll see if we can use Jun Wui to inquire about this mysterious expert. The black-robed man's fluttering voice seemed to have changed in tone. However, Bear Mountain and Long Crane didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. In fact, it seemed as if they were already used to it. Chapter 335. Today's first update. We mourn for the suffering of our compatriots in Zhoutsu. God bless China. That's natural. The black-robed man continued. He can help you advance. So, I can also. This man is extremely important to us. So how can we act rashly? Do I need you to remind me of such a trivial matter? Ah, you're right. Eldest brother is wise. Long Crane and Bear Mountain nodded vigorously. The two of them felt embarrassed. They had boasted in front of the other party, but they hadn't even finished their task after a month. This made the two of them feel ashamed. What should I say when I see him? We've stopped the Shui Hun Manor from going north. This matter has been thoroughly accomplished. Not only has the Shui Hun Manor been prevented from going north, but the Silver Blizzard City has also been forced to go south, but they hadn't broken Li Tungyun's legs. In fact, they hadn't even seen Li Tungyun's face yet. This was the most troublesome part. Moreover, Long Crane and Bear Mountain had a nest of fire in their hearts. So, breaking Li Tungyun's legs wouldn't be the end of the matter if they had the opportunity to confront him. Li Tungyun wouldn't only die, but he would die miserably if that happened. They had misgivings about Li Ju Tian earlier, so they hadn't dared to let him die. So, they hadn't been able to clean up the situation. But Li Ju Tian had deliberately planned to kill the fourth brother bear. So, there was no room for reconciliation between the two sides. Therefore, these two Xian Beast Kings had been provoked. So, how could they let Li Tungyun off easily? They couldn't wait for Li Ju Tian to die. They could also use this opportunity to strike a blow at that old bastard. The three of them looked at each other. Then, they saw that there was nothing else to do. So, they separated and went about their own business. Right at this moment, a commotion suddenly came from afar. Big Bear's brows immediately furrowed, and he said, "Something happened over at the leopard pack. This bunch of fellows really makes people worry." Leopards? The other two frowned as they looked into the distance. Two robust silhouettes were running towards them. Their bodies were snow white, and their eyes were glittering. They were two peak level 8 Xian beasts, the golden snow leopards. They were extremely fast and arrived in front of them in an instant. What's going on? Bear Mountain was greatly embarrassed. After the disappearance of the Leopard King, he had taken over the responsibility of the leopard tribe. But now, seeing these two adult snow leopards barging in without any order or discipline, he couldn't help but be furious. The two golden-eyed snow leopards whimpered and lay down on the ground, motionless. Then one of them turned around and picked up a snow-white little thing from its back. It put it on the ground and seemed to be trembling uncontrollably. The two golden-eyed snow leopards let out two woo sounds as they crouched on the ground. Their big heads nodded twice before they quickly retreated and disappeared into the forest. It's a little iron-winged leopard. It looks like it's only 1 month old. What a cute little fellow. Eh? The black-robed man had just said this when his body suddenly trembled. His entire body seemed to stiffen in an instant. Long Crane and Bear Mountain's bodies stiffened, and their eyes almost popped out of their sockets as they stared at the little guy who had curled up into a ball on the ground. It seemed as if they had discovered a rare treasure. This little guy was none other than Little White. The little guy had rushed out recklessly when he had heard the Chien Beast King's call. This was his innate nature, and he couldn't go against it. He had wanted to follow the team, to pay his respects to the Chien Beast King and return home. But he had been discovered as soon as he had entered the herd of Chien beasts. So, he had been sent here. He had suddenly seen 3 Chien Beast Kings standing right in front of him. So, the Chien Beast's innate nature of reverence towards the Chien Beast Kings had emerged, and he had obediently curled up on the ground as he trembled. Eldest brother, it's only an underage, King, 8th level iron-winged leopard. 8th level, level 8, CK. How is this possible? My grandmother, this is simply a dream. Third brother, quickly slap me. I must be dreaming. This is too hard to believe. Mother Cur. What's going on? Big Bear shouted, appearing to be so surprised that he forgot his manners. Long Crane's face darkened. The surroundings were completely silent. It was almost deathly silence. The eyes of the 3 Beast Kings were perfectly round. The eyes of the 3rd Crane King were relatively small, but they were flickering like light bulbs at this moment. The 4th Bear's eyes were big, but they were still filled with disbelief. His huge eyeballs were about to pop out of his eye sockets. As for the eldest Beast King, the eyes of the black-robed man were originally covered by a black cloth, but his sharp gaze penetrated through the black cloth at this moment. He had completely disregarded Bear Mountain's rude words. In fact, he would have gotten angry if this had happened in the past. But he hadn't said a word at this moment. This is too shocking. It's too unbelievable. The eldest Chien Beast King gently bent down and gently picked up Little White. He held him in his arms and felt as if he was holding a priceless treasure. Little White rolled his eyes in fear and whimpered in a low voice. He could feel his goodwill, but he still didn't dare to move. The black-cloaked man placed his palm on Little White's soft body. He let out a long sigh after a long while and said, "It's level 8. It's level 8. It's level 8. A miracle. It's a real miracle." At the level of the 3 great Beast Kings, they would normally be able to identify a Chien beast that hadn't taken human form with just a glance. They would be able to determine its level, rank, and strength. However, the Beast King eldest brother had personally confirmed this little guy's identity for the first time ever. Perhaps the shock he had received was too intense. But the eldest Chien Beast King's words were rather strange. He had first said that it was true. Then, he had expressed his amazement at first. But he had spoken incoherently towards the end. However, the other 2 Chien Beast Kings, Long Crane and Bear Mountain, didn't feel that his words were contradictory. Instead, they came closer to him in a dignified manner. They had carefully identified the Chien Beast King and had confirmed it. But both of them had opened their mouths wide and hadn't spoken a word. They had had this feeling when they had first seen it, and they had always been used to confirming the Chien Beast level. But they had still been shocked by this astonishing fact, and they had confirmed it over and over again. So, they had been thoroughly shocked. There was no other reason for this. It was because this fact was too inconceivable and too shocking. An iron-winged leopard's lifespan is usually 200 years. A level 7 Chien beast would normally advance every 10 years, and it would reach the early level of level 7 in 70 years. And it would break through the limits of its innate talent if it could reach the peak of level 7 within 70 years. Then it would transform and ascend to level 8. But the iron-winged leopard is limited by its innate talent. So, its lifetime achievements would stop there. The black-cloaked man had spoken these words quickly and anxiously. Moreover, his voice had sounded a little crisp, and it didn't match his usual gloominess. This piece of information didn't have much value. Not to mention the 3 great Beast Kings. It was very normal for an ordinary family member to receive this piece of information. However, At this moment, this piece of information that had long been publicly acknowledged and known to all had been completely overturned. But an iron-winged leopard cub of level 8 has appeared in front of us. It's a cub. The black-cloaked man gasped for breath. His black robe fluttered as if he was trying to suppress the excitement in his heart. Third brother, fourth brother, are we dreaming? How can such a thing happen? The black-cloaked man's entire body trembled, inferring from the current situation that this iron-winged leopard has probably advanced to the next level when it's 1 month old. Moreover, it hasn't even been weaned yet. Moreover, it hasn't even mastered its innate talent. So, it has advanced to the peak of its level? How is this possible? This is simply unimaginable. It's unbelievable. In the past, if anyone had told me that something like this could happen, I wouldn't have believed it even if I was beheaded. But now it's actually happening right before my eyes. Can anyone tell me what's going on? The Beast King shook his head again, and he shook his head with all his might. He then turned around twice in an unusually manic manner. Then his eyes rested on Little White's body and couldn't move away. This fact was very difficult to understand. It was very strange. In fact, it was so strange that even the Beast King of Tion Fa couldn't understand it. Long Crane and Bear Mountain were also shocked to the point that their minds had gone blank. Their mouths were wide open, and they weren't even aware that saliva was flowing out of their mouths. Bear Mountain's majestic body swayed for a long time. Then, he suddenly fell to the ground and groaned. He then grabbed his hair and hit his head on the ground. Then he said in a muffled voice, "Oh my God, this world has gone crazy, don't tell me." Long Crane smacked his lips as he thought of possibility. "Big brother, do you think that the Leopard King has raped a level 7 iron-winged leopard?" He suddenly stopped talking and slapped his own mouth. The other 2 men, including Bear Mountain, looked at him as if he was an idiot. "Idiot? How is this possible? Do you think that I'm only surprised at its level? Do you think that I'm as muddle-headed as you two? This little guy's strength isn't the reason why I'm so surprised." The Beast King paused for a moment and then continued. "I've carefully examined it a moment ago. This little guy's innate essence is that of an iron-winged leopard. It doesn't have any special characteristics of other high-level Xian beasts. So, I can confirm that this little guy's advancement is the result of some acquired factor. In other words, someone has helped it advance by some very mysterious means. That's not surprising. What's really surprising is that this little fellow's intrinsic limits have been modified. Within 30 years, it will definitely advance to the 9th level. Moreover, even a 9th level isn't its limit." The Black Cloak Man spoke in a serious manner. Then, he suddenly remembered what Long Crane had just said. So, he raised his leg and kicked Long Crane out of the room. Then he scolded, "You're a dignified Crane King, and you're going to rape a level 7 Crane King. Are you willing to do that? What are you thinking about with that pointy head of yours? Can't you think of something serious? Can't you think of something useful?" There was a hint of embarrassment in his voice. "I made a donation yesterday. Hey, I forgot to mention that I'm a party member. I made a donation of 100 yuan. Today, I saw a charity donation on the street, and I joined in. Seeing the crowd of people donating, everyone was very enthusiastic. Feng Ling felt a sense of gratitude in his heart. Yes, whether it's the reconstruction of the disaster area, or at least everyone in our society is doing their best. We have a clear conscience in this matter. We're all doing our best for our compatriots. We're looking forward to them getting out of their predicament and rebuilding their homes." As he approached, he suddenly remembered that he had made a donation as a citizen. But as an author, he hadn't. He counted his pockets and found that he still had more than 700 yuan after buying cigarettes. So, he took it all out. "I'm ashamed that I didn't bring much money, and I'm not rich. I can only say that I'm doing my best. That's all." The donation office had stipulated that anyone who made more than 500 yuan must leave their name, or write a blessing on the red flag. The red flag was almost full. After thinking for a while, he wrote this sentence. "The evil monarch's 100,000 brothers and sisters sincerely wish our compatriots of Zhoutiu to get out of their pain and rebuild their homes." My income comes from my brothers and sisters' subscriptions. So, let me shamelessly represent my 100,000 brothers and sisters to send this blessing. I'm very happy to have 100,000 brothers and sisters collection. I'm very proud when I write this sentence. There's even a sense of satisfaction. Haha, I'm not afraid of people saying that I'm fishing for fame, but I have a clear conscience. Chapter 336. Bear Mountain was still crouching on the ground in shock, but he couldn't help but raise his head to gloat. Suddenly, he shouted, "Boss, look, there's a jade tablet on this little thing's neck. It looks like it's actually being raised by someone. Doesn't that mean?" Hiss! He sucked in a breath of cold air, obviously shocked by his own thoughts domesticated. The black-robed man did not neglect Whitey. He flipped Whitey over to take a look. Sure enough, he saw a small jade tablet hanging on Whitey's neck. The jade tablet was crystal clear and pure white, the same color as its fur. If one did not pay attention, they would not be able to see it. If it was not for the fact that fourth Brother Bear was lying on the ground and the reflection was different from the other two Beast Kings, they might not have noticed it. Tian Xiang, Dugu. The black-robed man muttered these 4 words in a low voice. Then, he suddenly raised his head as if he was thinking in silence. After a long while, he said, "Tian Xiang City again. It seems that we really have to go to Tian Xiang City. This little fellow's miraculous advancement is already very clear. To be able to advance this little fellow's frail body, not only does it not have any sequelae, it can also greatly increase its growth space. Such a miraculous method is truly a method that seizes the fortune of the heavens and earth." Bear Mountain suddenly thought of something and got up. He walked in front of Little White and opened his mouth, letting out 2 woo-woo sounds and showing his teeth. Little White's eyes lit up. It raised its little paw and gestured twice, whining weakly. Black Robe was so angry that he stomped on Bear Mountain's butt. "Why didn't I forget that you can talk to it? You idiot. Why didn't you come earlier if you could talk to it?" Bear Mountain rubbed his butt and cursed inwardly. "You're the one who forgot. So how can you blame me?" However, his mouth did not dare to be negligent. He continued to mutter, then made a few strange syllables, followed by a series of muffled sounds. As time went on, Bear Mountain's questions became more and more urgent. Little White innocently tilted its head and looked at him. It whimpered a few times as if it wanted to explain something, but it couldn't. Its eyes were filled with confusion, and it finally lowered its head dejectedly. Its 2 ears also drooped down, and it didn't make a sound anymore. Bear Mountain shrugged helplessly, indicating that he was done with his questions. The Black-Cloaked Man and Long Crane opened their mouths at the same time. "What do you think?" "Woo, woo, woo, woo." Bear Mountain seemed to have forgotten to change his state, and his mouth was full of foreign words. Immediately, he received a punch to his chest and a kick to his butt. Howling in pain, he began to rub his front and back simultaneously. "Hurry up and tell me, you idiot!" Both of them had a fierce look on their faces. Little White was so scared that it shrank its head back into the arms of the Black-Cloaked Man. Although the little guy was young, it had good eyesight. It knew that the Black-Cloaked Man was the leader of the 3, so it was safest in his arms. Suddenly, it whimpered a few times in confusion, opened its watery eyes, and rolled around twice. It couldn't help but rub its head against the Black-Cloaked Man's arms, and then stuck out its pink little tongue to lick it. The Black-Cloaked Man's hand trembled as if it had been electrocuted, and Little White immediately fell to the ground. "This little thing," the Black-Cloaked Man cursed angrily. He rolled up his long sleeves and held Little White in his arms again. He patted its little head and said, "Behave yourself." His voice was strict. Little White looked at him in fear, and then obediently lay down and didn't move. I asked what he looked like, and he said that he was very, very good. How old he was? Very, very good, very, very good. Anyway, he was very, very good. Bear Mountain was so depressed that he almost looked up to the sky and howled. "There are no actual characteristics at all. How did you communicate with him? You idiot." The Black-Cloaked Man was obviously a little anxious. Apart from being very good, he also said that he smelled very good. He smelled even better than the owner. Bear Mountain said, In fact, he was also very depressed. What kind of mess was this? You should be content. It has just reached 1 month, and it's already good enough that he can communicate with you. What do you expect a little thing like him to say? At least we now know that helping Shin Beast advance is a real thing. Long Crane looked at him with disdain. Then he turned to the black-cloaked man and said, "Eldest brother, I feel that this matter has something to do with that mysterious black-cloaked man. In fact, it's almost certain that he's the one who did it. No one else in this world can do such a thing. Moreover, this little thing has a master, and its master must have a very close relationship with the person who helped it advance. So, how could such a method be used lightly unless it's a close friend?" That's right. Third Brother Crane's analysis is reasonable. Big Bear, why don't you learn from Third Brother? So, isn't it possible that the mysterious master has also come to Tion Fa? At least this little thing's master has come. The black-cloaked man's eyes lit up. He took 2 steps forward and then suddenly issued a resolute order. "We'll proceed according to the original plan. But the June and the Dugu families mustn't act rashly. He sighed. "Eldest brother, wouldn't it be?" Long Crane and Bear Mountain looked at him worriedly. "You're at the edge of the Earth realm right now. If this affects you, wouldn't it be? It doesn't matter." The black-cloaked man waved his sleeves and said, "This battle is to establish our might. We'll have at least 10 years of peace as long as we can defeat them. But we'll become a real disaster for Tion Fa if we're too timid to fight. I'll go into closed-door training once this matter is over and prepare to break through the 12th gate. At that time, Tion Fa will depend on you." "Yes," the 2 men replied in unison. Tion Fa's southern heaven city was in a state of chaos at this time. Everyone was in a state of panic. After witnessing the terrifying strength of Tion Fa's Xian beasts, everyone who had originally thought that they had gathered the strength of all the Xian experts in the world, and their confidence had swelled. But now, they no longer had the confidence that they would win. The number of Sky Xian experts who had come from the various aristocratic families and forces had numbered in the hundreds. There were also 40 to 50 Spirit Xian experts. This was not a weak force. Before Tion Fa's Xian beasts had shown their strength, most of the participants were filled with confidence in this battle. Some of them even had the thought of making good use of this battle to collect more Xian Dan and Xian beasts. These were all treasures, but after witnessing the terrifying lineup of Tion Fa's Xian beasts, all their beautiful thoughts were shattered. According to the calculation that 8th level Xian beasts were equivalent to Tion Xian Xian and 9th level Xian beasts were equivalent to Shun Xian, the Tion Fa force lineup far exceeded theirs. Not to mention the others, just the 9th level Xian beasts that they had seen earlier were probably no less than 100. As for 8th level Xian beasts, there were probably tens of thousands of them. How could they fight this battle? How could they fight? Still want to collect young Xian Dan beasts? Dream on. Besides, it was said that any one of the Xian beast kings could fight against a supreme master. Even if Feng Wanyun, the sword god of Gale, was included, there were only 5 supreme martial artists here. And what was even more ridiculous and despairing was that the strength of the number 1 Xian beast king of Tion Fa was simply unbeatable. At the very least, Supreme Master Ju Tian had fallen into an absolute disadvantage today. The leaders of the various families, factions, and countries had discussed for an entire day, but they did not come up with any effective countermeasures. One suggested a plan, another refuted it. Another suggested a strategy, and another immediately rejected it. This repeated over and over again, and it almost caused internal strife. Many people had already thought of retreating after seeing the powerful lineup of the Xian beasts. The young Master Jun's side wasn't calm either. In fact, he had been very tired the entire day. Moreover, he had been trying to subdue Bailey Luoyun. Then, he had rushed over at a very fast speed. Then, he had tried to move her with his words. However, he had thought that he would have a good rest after he had returned. But Little White had gone missing the moment he had returned. Therefore, he had tried to coax and persuade Dugashao. In the end, Da Xiao had run out of ideas. So, he simply pretended to be dead and was at his wit's end. The little girl insisted on looking for Little White and cried nonstop. Jun Da Xiao finally lost his patience and roared, "Cry again, and I'll tie you up like a dumpling and send you back to Tianxiang." Miss Dugu immediately stopped crying, but she was still angry and threw a tantrum. She had been looking for Jun Moxie for an entire day. Guan Qing Han carefully consoled her and rolled her eyes at Jun Moxie. This brat used to be very good at coaxing girls. Why doesn't he know how to do it now? His attitude is so bad. It's simply inexcusable. Jun Moxie felt like he was sitting on pins and needles under the attack of the two beauties. So, he dejectedly went out. He sighed. Why is my life so bitter? Why does everyone look for me when they need me? Am I a firefighter? He met Dongfang Wenjian and Dongfang Wendao as soon as he went out. The two Dongfang great masters weren't willing to let Jun Da Xiao off either. They interrogated Jun Moxie in detail about the various things he had done in the past few years. Their interrogation was very detailed and made the tired Da Xiao feel even more exhausted. "Oh my God, can't you let me rest for a while?" Jun Wui and Dongfang Wenqing returned in the evening with heavy expressions on their faces. Jun Wui made simple arrangements for the military affairs. Then, he went to Jun Moxie's tent. "Is the situation not good?" Jun Moxie asked. Guan Qing Han, who was at the side, quietly lifted her eyelids and pricked up her ears to listen. "It's not just not good. It's very bad." Jun Wui frowned and sighed. "The general has no will to fight, and the soldiers have no power to fight. Everyone is doing their own thing, and none of them are convinced. There are also a few families that have the intention to retreat. Under such circumstances, how can we fight a war without any will to fight? I believe that once the war breaks out, we will be in danger of being overturned." What? They haven't come up with anything after a whole day? The situation can't be that pessimistic, right? Jun Moxie was shocked. Even if the efficiency is low, it can't be this low, can it? Pessimistic? This is already a very optimistic statement. What do you think these people can come up with? Dongfang Wenqing snorted. She was full of anger. If it weren't for the few supreme martial artists, they would have definitely come up with a discussion today. Everyone's will to fight will collapse if the Tianxian beasts were to attack at night. It seems that Li Ju Tian doesn't have much leadership skills. Jun Moxie sighed. Nonsense. These great masters have a lofty status, but they're still the heroes of Jianghu. Which one of them has the ability to lead an army to fight a war? Each one of them is a man who has devoted himself to cultivation. How could they have achieved what they have today if they hadn't? I believe that only the first great master Yunbi Chun and the great master of life and death, Shi Chang Xiao, are capable of leading the 8 great masters. The rest of the 8 great masters are nothing more than idiots, especially that solitary falcon. He's a barbarian. Dongfang Wenqing spoke up angrily. I get angry just talking about him. He suggested that everyone gather their spirit Xian experts to kill their way into the Tianfa forest. Then, no one would know about this. Then, they would quickly kill off a few Xian beast kings and then retreat. Mother asterisk Kerr. Chapter 337. Jun Moxie was stunned. He was sweating profusely. Solitary Eagle's idea is too bold. What kind of person is this? I didn't realize that he's so talented in the past. I'm afraid that even an ordinary mouse can transmit messages in the Tianfa forest. So, how can we sneak in without anyone knowing? If they really followed Solitary Falcon's suggestion and concentrated their forces to sneak in, they would certainly be able to sneak in without anyone noticing. However, they would be surrounded by the enemy's army without anyone noticing. Then, they would be decapitated by the enemy's superior forces. This was absolutely foreseeable. Decapitation is a decapitation, but it's a decapitation of my own head. Jun Moxie had finally realized that his estimation of Solitary Eagle's intelligence had been too conservative. He had overestimated him by so much. It seems that this guy has trained his brain to be like an eagle's since he's on the snowy mountains with the Xian eagles every day. Today's journey isn't without any harvest. Jun Wui sighed and said, Tian Fa has issued a letter of challenge. They've agreed to a decisive battle in 3 days. They're currently considering a candidate for the commander. Speaking of the commander, your third uncle is very popular. Dongfang Wenqing snorted coldly and said angrily, First, the Silver Blizzard City's people strongly support your third uncle as the commander. They strongly praise your third uncle's leadership. Then, the young master of the Shui Han Manor, Li Tengyun, also strongly recommended him, and it was almost decided on the spot. Those bastards, they're clearly using someone else to do their dirty work. They're sending themselves to their deaths. Jun Moxie rolled his eyes. What about third uncle? Jun Wui raised his eyebrows and said, We've come here to resolve this matter. So, what can we do even if we're being used to do our dirty work? The Xian Beast Tide is a calamity for the entire continent. So, it must be suppressed and resolved. This decisive battle is also imperative. Even if I don't go, there will be others who will. Besides, I may not die for sure. You mean you accept it? Jun Moxie stood up, took 2 steps, and asked cautiously. That's right, Jun Wui said calmly. Other than me, no one else has the chance to be nominated. If I find an excuse not to go, then that means I'm afraid of death. Our Jun family's reputation will suffer a serious blow, and it will fall to the freezing point after today. Your grandfather, your father, your second uncle, and your 2 brothers had fought for the Jun family's reputation in the past. But they'll all go up in smoke because of my cowardly act. So, even if I die, I will not turn back. As I said before, there are things a man can do and things he can't. The reason why they mention your name is because of this. It's because you can't avoid it, and you can't retreat. Dongfang Wenqing snorted. You clearly know that it's a trap with no chance of survival, but you still want to jump into it? What kind of man is that? That's pure foolishness. I'd rather die than regret it. Jun Wui's face was covered with frost. The Jun family's reputation is more important to me than anything else. I don't want anything, but I won't allow the Jun family's reputation to fall to the ground. Idiot! Dongfang Wenqing scolded. You'll be sacrificing yourself needlessly if you go. A man must have his own responsibilities, and the Jun family's reputation is my responsibility at this moment. Jun Wui frowned slightly, but his face was resolute. The Jun family will not fall. Even if I go to war, there's still father and Mo Xie. The Jun family will not fall. But I'm a member of the Jun family, so I must stand up for them. I'm not trying to be a hero because they're trying to frame me. But the Jun family cannot fall. The Jun family will never do such a thing because they fear the enemy. Dongfang Wenqing trembled with anger. She stamped her feet and scolded. I've never seen such a stubborn person like you. Mo Xie, what do you say? I haven't worn my hat for 10 years, but I've kept my long hair for you. I look at Tian Xiang every night, but I won't look back in this life. Jun Moxie said in a low voice. Then he suddenly raised his head and asked, Third uncle, you don't care about this? It's just a trivial reputation. I don't care about it, and I believe grandfather won't either. For us, third uncle, your life is the most important. Don't forget that there's someone waiting for you on that snowy mountain. She's been waiting for you for 10 years, and she'll continue to wait. Jun Wuyi's body trembled violently. His face twitched in pain, and a layer of dark clouds covered his face in a split second. He tilted his head and hid his cheeks in the shadows of the candlelight. Then, he said bitterly, It's not all about reputation. Since ancient times, tens of thousands of corpses have been strewn across the battlefield. Which one of them didn't have elderly parents? Which one of them doesn't have a beautiful wife and young children? Am I, Jun Wui, special? Am I so precious? Can't you let go? I've made up my mind. Brothers, and Mo Xie, you don't need to persuade me anymore. I believe that I'll be more effective as the commander. At least, I'll be better than those good-for-nothings. Jun Wui smiled bitterly. Even if you want to go to war, you can't be the only one, right? Jun Moxie rolled his eyes. You'll have to lead the allied forces to meet the enemy head-on. And each of the aristocratic families will certainly have to send their men. Third uncle, the ordinary soldiers that you've brought with you will only be throwing away their lives in vain. So, we'll need a large number of experts. We'll need at least 3,000 to 5,000 people. And these people will at least be Earth Xian experts like you Xian. But how can there be so many experts in the army? So, even if you want to lead the army, the Silver Blizzard City, the Shui Hun Manor, and even the aristocratic families will have to send their men. Then what do you mean? Jun Wui's eyes flashed. We can also kill people with a borrowed knife. Jun Moxie smiled faintly, revealing his snow-white teeth. They sparkled under the light of the candlelight. He looked like a ferocious beast that was about to prey on its prey. His hand moved downwards as he said fiercely, "There's a price to pay for plotting against us. You want us to die? Sure. However, everyone had to perish together. Don't even think about running away, since they have the guts to plot against our June family. How can we let them succeed so easily? If they want us to shed a drop of blood, then they'll have to pay with their lives. And this is where third uncle's advantage lies. And it's also where you'll rely on it. Your conditions." Jun Moxie's eyes narrowed, and his murderous aura revealed itself. Since they want to plot against our June family, then they'll have to be prepared for a funeral. Let's see who'll die in the end. If we agree to this suicide mission, then many people will have to die with us. After all, there's no reason for all the Xian experts in the world to be here. So, there's no reason for you to lead a group of ordinary soldiers to die in the face of the Xian beast tide. This is our method and condition. If you don't agree, then we can't agree to it either, because this is a blatant attempt to frame us. Why should we die, but you don't? Are their lives more precious than ours? If we agree, we don't know who'll die in the end. Jun Moxie smiled coldly and said, "Don't worry, everything will be fine, third uncle." Then, he turned around and walked out. Dongfang Wenqing and the other two looked at Jun Wui, sighed, and followed him out. "Your third uncle has the will to die." Dongfang Wenqing looked up at the sky and took a deep breath of the forest smell in the night sky, and said in a heavy tone, "I knew it." Jun Moxie said gloomily, "He has the will to die for a long time. If it wasn't for grandfather's old age and me being a failure in the early years, maybe third uncle would have. Luckily, he could hold on for so many years. If it was someone else, they would have had a mental breakdown and committed suicide many times. And now, you guys have appeared, which means that I've found another strong backer. So, third uncle, he can't take it anymore? That's true." The three of them sighed in unison. What happened in the past, I believe, is an immeasurable blow to any man. Not to mention, your third uncle has always been a proud and great man. Putting yourself in his shoes, if the three of us were in the same situation, I'm afraid we would have gone crazy. Your third uncle, I think he must have been suffering in a wok of oil for the past 10 years. This kind of unbearable suffering will definitely not last for long. Jun Moxie was silent for a while, and suddenly said in a low voice. The three of them looked up at him, and their eyes were full of astonishment. If they wanted to solve Jun Wui's suffering, then they would have to face the Silver Blizzard City. How could this be so easy? I'm going to sleep. I'm really tired. Jun Moxie, through these words, turned around and walked out. What? The three uncles were stunned at the same time, and couldn't understand why. They were talking about such a serious and heavy topic, but this brat actually started to doze off? Doesn't he know that the Jun family is on the edge of a cliff? How can this brat be so heartless? The three shook their heads and turned around to leave. Jun Mo Xie blew out the oil lamp. Then his mind moved, and he suddenly disappeared from the tent. Then he rushed towards the Tian Fa forest like a bolt of lightning in an illusory manner. He left the southern heaven city in a flash, and Jun Moxie boldly launched the Yin-Yang escape and flew away at a high speed like a meteor. It was clear that the third uncle had decided to participate in this war. So, Jun Moxie's solution was to find Long Crane and Bear Mountain as soon as possible, Wouldn't these two bastards dare to injure my third uncle? Wouldn't that be like a flood rushing against the Dragon King's temple? Besides, do you think I won't be able to kill you with a borrowed knife? I'm much better than you at playing this game. Naturally, he couldn't use his real face this time. So, it would be better to disguise his identity as a mysterious expert. June Moxie was happy in his heart. Wouldn't it be a piece of cake if a mysterious expert were to take action? It seems that I'll have to act tough again today. June Moxie suddenly felt like a dragon returning to the sea and a tiger returning to the mountains as soon as he stepped into the Tianfa forest. In fact, he had covered a distance of 50 kilometers in a single breath. This was an extreme indulgence, extreme relaxation. It didn't matter whether it was his external body or his internal soul. In fact, every cell in his body felt that endless relaxation. And this extremely comfortable feeling had made him fall in love with the Tianfa forest for the first time. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.